The story begins in West Africa. Here at the main Institute of Biochemistry something strange is happening. Loud sounds were heard everywhere. Red lights were flashing in the main building, indicating that an alarm had sounded throughout the facility. Someone broke in and killed all the guards. The bloody corpses of soldiers with weapons lay everywhere. Those who did this were clearly professionals in their field. One of the main professors of this laboratory was also killed. He defended to the last a sample of one of the most dangerous viruses on Earth. But now he could no longer do anything, and without any problems he took a small glass cube from his hands. Inside it was a test tube with a red substance. This man turned out to be the captain of a special group under special number 228. Now he could report to his superiors about the successful completion of the mission. His name was Hao Tian. He managed to successfully obtain the super blood virus pathogen. Now he should inform all his people and quickly get out of here. However, his telephone conversation was interrupted by a sudden shot from a pistol. A bullet flew straight towards him. He did not expect this at all. In the end, a test tube with a dangerous pathogen exploded right in his hands. This was very bad, because now the hero is guaranteed to become infected. In addition, one of the fragments left a cut on his cheek. Now the guy did not have the slightest chance that he would somehow be able to avoid infection. It turned out that one of the guards was still conscious. At the cost of his life he destroyed the glass cube. The hero finally took his life, but it was too late. Hao Tian ordered his people not to approach him even a meter, because the pathogen had entered the body in any case and could now infect others. The effect could be felt within a few minutes. The guy felt severe pain inside himself, as if the very structure of his DNA began to change. At some point, he became so ill that he started bleeding from his mouth. If he didn't find help right away, the risk of dying became colossal. Further events take us 3 years forward. Here in the city of Fuyang, in the office of one of the corporations, a cleaner was finishing his shift. It was already 9 in the evening, so there was no one left in the office except him. The guy calmly finished his work while humming a song. This man turned out to be Hao Tian. Somehow he managed to stay alive after that incident in the laboratory, but apparently he was unable to continue his service. At the same time, the guy was grateful for this too. After all, he still had the most valuable thing. Now he had finished work and could calmly go home. With these thoughts, the hero turned off the light and headed towards the exit, but suddenly his attention was attracted by one little thing. The monitor of one of the computers was turned on. Apparently one of the office workers was too lazy to clean up their workplace. In fact, it was very unprofessional, because the company pays a good salary, but people cannot calculate the cost of electricity. Hao Tian went to the computer and was about to turn it off, but on the monitor he saw something that surprised him even more. The owner of this workplace managed to watch adult films right at work. The hero was very embarrassed when he realized this. As it turned out, there was someone else in the building. The girl caught the hero at the most inopportune moment and asked what he was doing here. Hao Tian replied that he got a job here a few days ago and works as a cleaner. Right now he finished his duty and was about to leave. The worker's attention was drawn to the fact that for some reason an ordinary cleaner was standing in front of the computer, because this was in no way part of his duties. After that, the beauty came closer and could see what was happening on the screen. Of course she thought that Hao Tian was watching this on purpose. Because of this, the girl was very embarrassed and forced her to immediately turn off the computer, which he allows himself to do. Shame on him. The hero tried to justify himself and explained how everything really happened. The pretty employee simply misunderstood everything. However, she didn't even want to listen to him, but simply took the first thing that came to hand and threw the thing right at the guy's head. It didn't hurt at all, because a blow from a simple pillow couldn't harm anyone, but the hero was a little confused by the surprise. The beauty continued to call Hao Tian a pervert who, taking advantage of the absence of other people, watched all sorts of nasty things here. She also threatens that tomorrow she will tell her boss about everything and the hero will be fired, and he must give her his badge right now. Hao Tian once again tried to explain the whole situation. He didn't want to lose this job at all, because he had no other sources of income. However, the beauty simply hit her heel in response and continued to stand her ground. She couldn't believe that all this could be a simple misunderstanding. They caught him right now, and he continues to lie. Is it really so difficult to admit a mistake? How can you continue to call yourself a man after something like this? Hao Tian understands that there is no way out and apologizes, but at the same time he was just passing by and does not think that it is normal to watch such films at work. He acted for the benefit of the company, because electricity is very expensive now. The hero just wanted to turn off the computer. At some point, he began to wonder why the employee immediately began to worry so much when she saw him near the table. Was it really her workplace? That would explain everything. Apparently the girl herself turned on an adult video and watched while no one was watching. The beauty was very angry when she heard this. How dare this janitor say such things about her? He will definitely regret it. She even swung her leg at him in an attempt to hit him. He needed to stop talking nonsense right now. However, she doesn't succeed, because Hao Tian easily grabbed her leg. This worker is behaving too aggressively. In fact, the guy didn't care whether she watched such films, but insulting a stranger is actually very low of her. The girl couldn't believe her eyes how this janitor managed to grab her leg with such ease. She had been studying martial arts since childhood. After that, the worker somehow ended up right on the table. The picture turned out to be very obscene. She clearly didn't want it to happen like that. The hero asks her if she wants to apologize for her words. Does she really like to pin bad deeds on others? The beauty was very scared. It seemed to her that this cleaner was some kind of pervert. Who knows what is on his mind now? At this moment, the hero is tired of hearing all sorts of insults addressed to her. Now she finds out what happens to those who like to slander the innocent. Hao Tian picked up a marker. It is with the help of this tool that he is going to properly teach the impudent woman a lesson. The guy wrote a few words on her face. The girl was so offended that she even cried a little. He would definitely pay her for this, if only he would wait a little. To avoid this, the hero also photographed the employee's face on her phone. If she tries to complain about him, there will be consequences. He can easily post this photo on the company forum, after which the beauty will become very famous. Everyone will talk only about her. At some point, Hao Tian leaves. This girl should think a little about her behavior. After all, she was the first to attack him. However, the beauty only became angrier after this. She hit the chair with all her strength. This idiot will definitely answer for everything. Her name is Lin Yumu. The girl took this situation as a personal and very deep insult. Now she wants revenge more than anything else. The events take place in a small town on the outskirts of the metropolis. In fact, it looked like a collection of very poor slums. This area was considered very unfavorable. The houses here had a maximum of 4 floors, and crime flourished on the streets. It was in one of these poor houses that a guy lived. He finally managed to get home from work. Now he can rest a little. The first thing Hao Tian did was open his refrigerator. There was nothing in it except a lot of beer and some unusual syringes on the side shelf. The hero decides to freshen up a little and takes out a bottle of alcohol, but as soon as he tried to open it, something bad happened. He suddenly felt severe pain throughout his entire body. It was so piercing that he could hardly stand on his feet. Fortunately, after a few seconds the pain subsided a little. Now he urgently needs to use a special medicine. It was for this purpose that he had special syringes with an unusual liquid in his refrigerator. Only they could help him. The guy immediately grabs one of these tools and sticks it into his hand. This is definitely the aftermath of that incident in Africa a few years ago. Inside the syringe there was a certain virus. This time it turned out to be much stronger than the previous one. Only in this way the hero manages to avoid death. However, it didn't really matter how powerful the pathogen was. In any case, Hao Tian was obliged to grab the secret place in a few days and get some more material. Such things can only be found in the secret laboratory of the Institute of Biochemistry. The last time the guy did this, it turned out quite funny. However, there was always a danger, because they could update their defense system. Before that the hero could freely come and go from there without any problems. After this, Hao Tian remembers those events. He can't get that ill-fated day out of his head. It really was a lot of bad luck. After he ordered his men to approach me, one of my comrades tried to find out what the soldier was going to do next. The guy understood that there was no cure for this virus. To prevent it from spreading further, he needed to find a deserted place right now. He also asked his comrades to ask his superiors for a leave of absence for him. They just need to tell them that Hao Tian will not be able to return to the team for a while. 3 years have passed since then. The hero had to live in the forest for more than a year. This virus made him a real savage, but that was not the worst thing. He was very lucky, because although this virus is incurable, at least it is no longer contagious. the guy could at least live among ordinary people. Now he has to introduce other pathogens into his body to fight the poison. This is the only way to alleviate the suffering. However, Hao Tian understood that this could not last long. At some point his body simply could not stand it. Now there was no point in thinking about it, because everything that could have already been done. If now the guy dies from fatigue, then he won't be able to do anything tomorrow. Now he needs to sleep. He lay down on the bed and tried to sleep, but as soon as his eyes began to close, he again felt the same sensation, as if every cell of his body was changing its structure. When this happened, Hao Tian suddenly opened his eyes. For some reason his method did not work today. The virus in his body did not calm down at all. It was very strange, because the pathogen in that syringe was one of the strongest of all time, so why did this pain return so quickly? There was only one way to explain this. Apparently the disease had already mutated. Now we need to look for other options, otherwise the guy won't last long. He had to use almost all the bacteria he had, the only way he could get at least a little sleep. Hao Tian lay on the floor and slept very lightly. The pain remained even now, but it was not felt much. Because of this, sweat appeared on his face. Suddenly he sharply opened his eyes. Now the hero was in a state of shock, because when he fell asleep, he had no idea whether he would be able to wake up. After that, Hao Tian sat down and tried to recover at least a little. Fortunately this situation did not lead to the worst. He did not die that night. However, changes did occur. Some strange things began to fly before his eyes. Could it be that the virus affected him in this way? It was like a hallucination. All these things around can only be seen through a microscope. Not a single person has the kind of vision that would allow them to see microbes. At some point, the guy notices that he has never been able to see these viruses live. Did he gain the ability to observe the bacteria that he had introduced into himself over the past 2 years? In fact, this ability was very useful. It seems that now the guy can absorb microorganisms and bacteria for his own needs. Now he needs to try this with some object. A metal pipe should be perfect for such a task. Hao Tian took the object in his hands and tried to corrode the steel with the help of bacteria. To do this, he needed to concentrate all his strength in the right direction. After a few seconds, everything worked. The thing in his hand gradually began to change. The entire pipe was covered with uneven holes. This technique was simply incredibly powerful, but its use required enormous physical effort. At some point, the hero notices a strange thing. A virus has appeared near him, which he had never even seen before. He needs to study it. It really turned out to be a unique type of bacteria. It seems that when a guy absorbs different microorganisms, he is subsequently able to develop his abilities. It was simply amazing. Hao Tian not only survived the disaster, but also became even stronger. Perhaps in this way he will someday be able to fully recover. However, now his body is still in a rather weak state. Apparently he spent too much energy, which is why he began to cough heavily. The hero himself understood this perfectly well. Now he needs to rest a little. The use of this technique squeezed even more energy out of him than he expected. Meanwhile, in the office where he worked, 2 girls greeted their boss. It was the worker whom the hero met last night. Lin Yimu turned out to be the chairman of a group with assets valued at several $billion. Her nickname was the Ice Goddess. When the woman sat down on her chair, she noticed that her buttocks were quite sore, precisely because of yesterday's idiot who threw her on the table. Suddenly the beauty remembers what she had to endure a few hours ago. She will not be able to forget this humiliation for the rest of her life. Now the boss will never let this man go until she takes revenge. Does the guy really work here as a janitor? How this even happened, that a janitor from her own company managed to mock the Ice Goddess, is simply unthinkable. Now the girl urgently needs to calm down, because her assistant will come soon. She really wants to discuss this with her sister. By the way, she was already there. One of the workers told her that President Lin was already waiting for her in his office. The vice president had a very playful character. She uses a gesture to indicate to the girl that she herself knows very well where the Ice Goddess is. After all, her little sister had already told her everything on the phone. The assistant's name was Chu Yaoyao. She had a very bad character, because of which she likes to torture others. The girl opened the door and immediately asked her eldest why she needed her at such an early time. It was only 7 in the morning. Lin Yimu was happy that the younger one came so quickly and asked her to sit on the sofa next to her. They needed to talk about something. Chu Yaoyao immediately lay down and began to complain that she ran so fast on the way here that she seemed to have twisted her ankle. After work she wanted to go to the spa. Her boss asks her to behave a little more civilized. The girl should look at herself from the outside. What if some man comes in here now? In response to this, the vice president noted that not a single person would dare to enter here without permission. This is, after all, the office of the president of the company. And even if such a situation happens, not a single man will be able to leave here safe and sound. Suddenly Chu Yaoyao asks Lin Yumou not to pay attention to her. Her junior started talking nonsense as always. She will never act so frivolously. In fact, now was not the time to discuss such nonsense. At the moment, the only thing that mattered was what happened to her eldest. Next, the ice goddess briefly described yesterday's situation. Now she needs information that the vice president should have gotten for her. Chu Yaoyao immediately handed her the envelope. There was all the necessary information about this janitor. The chances that the girl missed something were minimal. But what could this guy do? If his offense is really serious, then he will never be able to get away with it. Lin Yumou was very interested in Hao Tian, because his origin was unknown, but at the same time the hero looked rather suspicious. Therefore, she wanted to find out if there was any interesting information about him, but nothing special was found in these documents. But that was enough for the company president. Now she has the opportunity to take proper revenge on this stupid janitor. Because the beauty jumped up from the table so suddenly, her buttocks started to hurt again. Chu Yaoyao was even a little worried about whether her little sister was okay. The ice goddess quickly replied that everything was just fine with her, and now she had a task for the vice president. The girl must make this man suffer for the next couple of days. At the same time, Chu Yaoyao noticed that this man was just a janitor. Why should a beauty like her have anything to do with him? What if this brings her down to Hao Tian's level? This worker's salary is only 2,000, he might as well just be fired from his job. Lin Yumou immediately abandoned this idea. Because dismissal is too soft, she wants the younger one to do everything possible and give him hell on earth. At some point, the vice president noticed that her eldest was a little out of sorts. Perhaps she was a little sick and therefore was acting like a wild cat. But the ice goddess insisted that this person had offended her very much yesterday, and she had already been in a very bad mood for the past 2 days. When Chu Yaoyao heard this, she became a little interested. Although this is a waste of her time, but for the sake of her little sister, she is willing to agree to this. Now Lin Yumou may not worry about this janitor, but in return, the girl must take on some of her junior's responsibilities. After the vice president left, the ice goddess looked at the hero's documents for quite a long time. It seems that the situation hurt her even more than one could imagine. At some point, the girl angrily grabbed the pen and pierced Hao Tian's photo with all her might. She would not let him go until he begged on her knees for forgiveness. Until then, the president will monitor this person very closely. Not a single step will go unnoticed. Meanwhile, in his apartment the guy was still sleeping. It looked like he would need much more time to regain his strength. He woke up only after 3 whole days. This was very bad, because due to his absence from work, he would definitely be punished with a huge fine. Hao Tian got dressed as quickly as he could and immediately ran to work. Now there is no way he could lose his only source of income. For now, his boss did not have the right to fire the janitor, so there was still a chance to stay. The hero really wanted to have a snack, because he had not eaten anything for several dozen hours. To do this he looked into his favorite street food stall. The seller knew the guy well and asked why he had been away from work for so long. His wife, who worked in the same company, told him about it. And the man also invited Hao Tian to his home for dinner. They could drink a couple of glasses together. The hero seems to tolerate alcohol well. He happily agrees, and besides, his shift ends early today, so Hao Tian will come to the merchant immediately after work. Meanwhile, Chu Yaoyao noticed that this janitor had not been at work for 3 whole days, and by the way, she had already prepared a show for him. At some point, her secretary called her and said that the right person had finally arrived, and now everyone needed to behave according to the instructions. Lin Yumou also heard that her offender had come to the office and immediately ran to her little sister. The vice president called her eldest closer. She arrived just in time. Now they could watch the excellent performance together. Hao Tian immediately began to make excuses to the head of the department and asked not to be too angry with him, but to listen to the excuse first. However, the hero's boss didn't even want to hear about it, because his probationary period hadn't even expired yet, and he had already been absent for 3 whole days. The guy was not taken aback and hinted that he was just a cleaner, a small link in the company. Maybe he would still be forgiven for such an offense. Moreover, Hao Tian knows that someone more important did not come to work for 8 whole days last month. The head of the department immediately realized that this cleaner wanted to pull him along with him. Had he really been watching him for so long? The man gestures that there is a camera right behind them, so he should stop talking nonsense or he will be in big trouble. In response, the hero pretends that he doesn't understand anything, but there is no one else here except the 2 of them, so why was the head of the department so worried? In fact, Hao Tian knew for sure that there were several cameras in the room. He managed to understand this as soon as he entered here. This situation looked very strange. Why were there so many hidden things in the room? His instinct told him that someone was trying to lure the guy into a trap. Perhaps now he was in danger. After this, the hero decides to intimidate his boss and remembers an incident when he complained about the terrible character of the company's vice president. The man immediately tried to shut up the janitor. How could he not be afraid to say such things? If he so wants to die, then let him do it himself. Chu Yaoyao was indignant at such words. This impudent guy dared to insult even her. Now the girl has even more reasons to turn his life into a complete hell. At some point, the head of the department finally breaks down and orders Hao Tian to shut up. From now on he will have to be responsible for all the rooms from the 1st to the 27th floor. The guy was not at all upset when he heard this. He just has a lot of strength and energy to do all the dirty work. He is happy that he stayed in this place. And the hero also asks the man to borrow him some money. The boss couldn't even believe that this janitor had the courage to ask for this after what happened. Hao Tian was absent from work for several days, and now he has money. If he needs it so much, then let him go and earn money. The guy accepts this answer and immediately gets to work. The vice president suggests to his little sister that they transfer their target to the administrative department, so they will have more opportunities to play with him. Lin Yumu doesn't want to do this, because this cleaner is most likely an ordinary illiterate high school graduate who is good for nothing but cleaning. As it turned out, Hao Tian did not even graduate from high school. In fact, at one time he simply bought a certificate for several $100s. At some point, Chu Yaoyao notices that this guy is too energetic. His physical strength is quite good. Maybe he would be better off as a guard. When the ice goddess heard this, she became even more angry. This idiot does not deserve such treatment. When the beauty looks at him, she immediately becomes enraged. The vice president was even a little confused. Her sister was in too bad a mood today. Did that incident really hurt her that much? Lin Yumu explains that her pride has indeed suffered greatly, and now until she succeeds in taking revenge, she will not be able to sleep peacefully. That is why Chu Yaoyao needs to teach the hero a good lesson as soon as possible. She should start tomorrow, because the sooner the better. The vice president still does not accept such a reaction to a simple misunderstanding, but she has no choice but to agree. A few hours later, Hao Tian had already finished all his work. He managed to wash all 27 floors in a fairly short time, and now he could safely go home. Suddenly the hero remembers that this evening he promised to come to visit a street vendor and drink a couple of glasses of alcohol with him. Now you definitely need to go to the store and buy something as a gift. Hao Tian can't come empty-handed. It's very uncivilized. The guy reported to the boss that he had already completed all the work, and the man, making sure that everything was in order, let him go home. However, Hao Tian once again asks the head of the department to lend him some money for groceries. He will give everything to the last penny as soon as he receives his salary. The boss wasn't going to give him anything. How could this janitor have the nerve to ask for such a thing after almost ruining his career this morning? Then the events move to the famous street, where people constantly disappear. This area was considered one of the most dangerous in the city. Bandits from a variety of gangs constantly walk here. If you are unlucky enough to become someone's target, then you run a very high risk of losing your life. Right now a girl was walking in one of the alleys. Apparently she got here unknowingly, because being alone in such places in the evening is too dangerous. At some point, the stranger notices that there is someone behind her. The girl immediately got scared and decided to speed up her pace. But in fact, he was not a bandit. Apparently Hao Tian just made his face too serious, so she mistook him for a criminal. At the same time, there were other people here who most likely had very bad intentions. It would be better to warn the stranger. The hero shouted after her and asked her to stop. It was best for the girl to stay close to him now, so she would have a better chance of staying safe. However, the stranger only became even more frightened and called the guy a pervert, and now she simply began to run away. Hao Tian didn't expect such a reaction at all. Does he really look like some kind of maniac? This is too much. For some reason, the stranger thought that the hero looked obscene. She thought that most likely this was again one of Huang Mao's people. Suddenly, a man appeared right in front of her. Most likely this is the same bandit whom the girl fears so much. The villain has clearly been pursuing his goal for quite some time. Huang Mao calls it an amazing coincidence that they met here again. But why is the beauty in such a hurry to go home? By the way, today is his birthday, so the bandit invites the girl to celebrate at his house, but the stranger in response asks him to leave her alone and forget her forever. In turn, the villain had no intention of doing this at all. He began to behave very obscenely and touched her face with his hand. Was she really in such a hurry to go on a date with the guy? The beauty should choose her words better, because everyone around knows who Huang Mao is. Now the bandit will let her go only when she does everything she is ordered to do. The girl flatly refuses such a terrible offer. If this scoundrel does not calm down now, she will call the police. Suddenly, an object flew straight towards them. As it turned out, someone threw a large red apple towards the bandit. The throw was so strong that the bully even began to bleed from his mouth. He did not expect this at all, so he did not have time to dodge. One of his assistants immediately rushed to help, and the girl tried to determine where this fruit came from, whether that guy had really helped her. As it turned out, it was really Hao Tian. He decided to follow the stranger a little and was right. If not for his help, the beauty could have suffered. However, the guy bought these apples as a gift, so he doesn't want to lose them because of some idiot. He should return the fruit back. Huang Mao came to his senses a little and rose to his feet. He could not believe that there were still fools who were trying to pretend to be heroes. Hao Tian wasn't really someone who believed in justice in the world. He just wanted to see if he could knock out this weakling with one throw. The stranger was so frightened that she still continued to consider the hero a pervert. It seemed to her that he also wanted to do something to her. Huang Mao decided that the guy belonged to some gang and tried to negotiate with him. They could divide the loot among themselves. Only the bandit would be the first. But only on the condition that Hao Tian helps push this girl into the car, so the bully wanted to get away with it. But he is unlikely to succeed, because the hero ordered him to immediately explain what exactly he was going to do with this innocent stranger. The bandits clearly did not expect such an answer. Usually only people like them appear on such dangerous streets. Is this guy really different? Hao Tian reported that he was actually the general manager of the Red Scarf organization, which specializes in helping in dangerous situations. Considering the current situation, the girl can entrust the management to him. The company's services cost only 1,000 yuan, but if you pay a little extra, it is possible to mutilate these two ugly aliens. Huang Mao and his assistant were even more surprised. They had been called various bad words many times, but this was the first time they had been called ugly aliens. In addition, if a girl wants to get rid of this problem forever, then there is a premium option. It costs only 5,000 yuan. At the same time, the hero notices that the company is private, so they do not accept counter offers. The stranger should make a decision right now. The bandit was furious at how this weakling dared to insult his handsome face. Now he will deal with him with the help of his favorite knife. While the villain was running towards the guy, the stranger shouted that she was ready to use the most expensive service. Now Hao Tian could act. He thanked the client for the excellent choice. Now she will be able to see how correct her choice was. It was at this moment that the blade of the knife was just a few centimeters from the hero, while his face looked incredibly calm. As it turned out, there were reasons for this, because the guy was able to stop the bandit with just one slap in the face. The blow turned out to be incredibly strong. When Huang Mao missed him, he flew back several meters and stopped only after hitting a solid concrete wall. In addition, the bandit spat out several teeth into his palm. Was Hao Tian's slap really that powerful? Because of this, the bully became furious. No one in this area would dare to humiliate him like that. Now he wants revenge more than anything else. However, the hero was not at all interested in these stories. he simply walked up to the villain and kicked him in the face with all his might. The assistant, in turn, could not believe his eyes. Was it possible that his boss was defeated by some random person passing by? The second bully decides that the girl is to blame for everything that happened and rushes at her with a knife, for which she must die today. But fortunately the guy turned out to be much faster. He managed to grab him by the neck from behind. Now this scoundrel will get what he deserves. The hero squeezed his throat with his elbow with all his might. The bandit did not even try to resist, but simply dropped the knife to the ground. And after that, exhausted, he fell straight onto the hard asphalt. It looks like the bully was unconscious. He clearly deserves it. The girl was very surprised at how strong Hao Tian is. He is clearly an unusual person. Perhaps he had to work in the police before. Huang Mao tried to run away, but he failed. The guy immediately noticed this and stepped on him with all his might. Now the mission to eliminate the two pursuers has been successfully completed. If the stranger wants to get rid of them forever, then it costs a little more. For a small surcharge, Hao Tian can actually make these two disappear forever, and the police will never find a trace. The girl was sure that this man was capable of doing what he was talking about, but she didn't want anyone to die. These idiots had already learned a good lesson. So she simply thanks her savior and bless him for his actions. But the hero doesn't really need blessings, he needs money. The stranger had only 300 yuan in her wallet. Apparently she did not have rich parents. It's just that the girl started working quite recently, so she has quite a bit of money, and she will definitely give the rest a little later. Hao Tian agreed to this. The client can pay the remaining amount in installments. The interest rate is 10% for the first year. But if a girl deceives their organization, they will monitor her for the rest of her life. This is how they fight dishonest clients. This stranger's name was Song Ronrong. She worked in the surgical department of the city's first people's hospital, and she would definitely have the money to pay the balance. The hero saw sincerity in the girl's eyes and believed in it. Besides, he will not take payment from her for this month. After all, she is really in a difficult situation. After that, they disperse. Hao Tian invited his new friend to take her home, but the girl refused, because she only had a few tens of meters left to walk. But for some reason, the guy continued to walk along the same road as Song Ronrong. They even went together to the house where the girl's apartment was located. From this, she asks the hero to believe in the truthfulness of her words. Hao Tian does not have to follow her all the way to the house. She will be able to pay everything to the last penny. As it turned out, the guy had no doubt about it. It was a coincidence that they walked into this house together. After all, the guy also needs to come here. An old friend invited him to dinner. They were going to drink a few glasses of alcohol together. Song Ronrong was very surprised when she found out about this. There were only a few apartments in their house, and her mother also told her that a guest would come to them today. Suddenly she calls the hero by name. He was very embarrassed when he heard him. How does this girl know this? They met a couple of hours ago. At some point it dawns on him that most likely the street vendor is her father. In truth it was obvious, because they have the same last names. The man's name was Da Sun. His daughter imagined today's guest a little differently. She thought that this man was several decades older. Hao Tian, in turn, also couldn't imagine that the hot dog seller's daughter was so beautiful, which made him even a little embarrassed. The hero asks his new acquaintance not to call him uncle, because the difference in their ages is very insignificant, but Song Ronrong believed that this was correct. After all, the guest is a friend of her father. By the way, since this person is actually a friend of their family, then perhaps he will do a great favor and will not charge her for those services. However, Hao Tian did not want to do this, because they had already concluded an agreement. It could no longer be broken or changed. The money would still have to be returned. Looking at all this, the girl tried to get at least a small discount for herself. The hero agreed not to take a percentage of the commission for her. Song Ronrong, and that was enough. She thanked her friend for his kindness. The guy couldn't believe that the food seller had such a sweet and cunning daughter. Suddenly, a woman walking after them up the stairs addressed them. From her speech it became clear that she knew who they were. It turned out to be the girl's mother. She was surprised that these two knew each other. Apparently the hero had been a friend of their family for quite some time. After that, everyone went to the apartment and sat down at the table. The man first decided to drink 1 glass per meeting. Food would be on the table in a couple of minutes. Hao Tian sincerely asks not to worry about this. he is not so hungry that he would rush Song Ranrong and her mother for the sake of it. Meanwhile, they were talking in the kitchen. The woman was surprised how these two managed to meet halfway here. Had they really never seen each other before? This really was the case. My mother notes that although the hero is a very good guy, he has no ambitions at all and is too lazy. His daughter asked not to say such things, because their guest could hear everything. In fact, the guy had already noticed their conversation and was a little upset. Meanwhile, Huang Mao and his assistant were making excuses to their boss for their defeat. Now they all need to take revenge on the offender. The gang leader wanted to know the name of the man who dared to attack his people. The sooner they received this information, the sooner they could get rid of him. However, there were minor problems with this, because the attacker did not give his name, but only said that he belonged to a certain organization called the Red Scarf. Therefore, you need to work with what you had. The boss orders his people to take care of the girl first, and he will personally take care of this red scarf. Within a few minutes, the entire table was filled with food. Hao Tian was convinced that his new girlfriend was cooking just fine. Everything was very tasty. Perhaps the food seemed so attractive to him because the guy had not eaten for a whole day. The owners of the house asked him to eat as much as he could fit. The woman also worked in the same company as him, so she was interested in one question: whether the hero had offended anyone from his superiors. Hao Tian replies that everything is fine. He just had health problems due to which he missed work for a couple of days, so the senior manager was a little angry with him. The owner of the house was surprised by one moment. For some reason, wherever the guy went, the camera was constantly aimed at him, as if someone was deliberately watching him. This information interested the hero very much. He understood that someone was watching him, but he did not know that this was happening so diligently. Now they can start an investigation. It was very bad. How could a simple job as a janitor become so dangerous? Song Ranrong noticed that the guest was very upset and she felt very sorry for him. She needed to come up with some way to defuse the situation. The girl notices that even if the guy offended someone, he has nothing to worry about, because for someone like him it won't be difficult to find another job. In fact, Hao Tian did not want to change his profession. After all, he still manages to get along with everyone, and besides, this job is very inconspicuous. The man really liked this answer. He considered this the most important thing in life. First of all, you need to remain calm even in a difficult situation. After that, they spent several more hours at dinner. The hero is really very grateful for the invitation. He had long wanted to sit with someone. After a while, the guy had to leave. After all, he could never be late tomorrow, and Song Ranrong was going to see him off. The girl wanted to ask her new friend not to tell her parents anything about the current situation. They don't need to worry about it. Hao Tian promises her that he will keep his mouth shut, but now she needs to go back, because he doesn't want to save his friend again. Song Ranrong was a little embarrassed by these words. This man turned out to be really very kind. He can definitely be trusted as a brother. Suddenly her mother came up behind her. The woman was wondering if they had really never met before. Her daughter once again answered that everything was exactly like that. In fact, she was worried that her child might have an affair with this guy. In the woman's opinion, he was not good enough for her. The girl, in turn, asked her mother to speak more quietly, because the guest was not far away and could once again hear their conversation. The hero really heard all this perfectly well. Only a completely deaf person could have missed such loud screams. Song Ranrong asks her mom to stop this stupid talk. She really shouldn't worry about anything, because the girl already has a boyfriend. The woman immediately began bombarding her daughter with a bunch of questions. She needed to know where this person works and what his monthly salary is. Meanwhile, Hao Tian returned back to his apartment. This place was very different from the cozy house where he had dinner today. But the worst thing was the hero's illness. Now he could only guess what would happen to his body in the near future. At the same time, at first glance, everything was fine, because after he lost consciousness a few days ago, nothing bad happened to him. Now the guy should think about whether he needs to continue taking all these substances. Perhaps such procedures are no longer necessary. Hao Tian decides to just go to bed, because tomorrow he needs to go to the office and be sure to find out who is watching him so carefully. The next morning, the vice president was going to give this guy a new show. In fact, yesterday was just a small test. The hero has just arrived at work. The girl orders all her people to take the right places. now this janitor will feel her revenge. Chu Yaoyao sincerely wants to make Hao Tian suffer as soon as possible. This is the only way she can help her big sister. As soon as the guy walked into the office area, the security guard sharply drew attention to him and came out of his booth with a baseball bat in his hands. And the next moment the man threw a sports instrument directly towards the hero. Apparently such instructions were given to him by his superiors. However, such a cheap trick wouldn't work on Hao Tian. He had no trouble easily grabbing the bat with his hand without even looking back. And after that, with the same ease, return it back to the guard. Only the man did not have such skills and simply received a sports instrument in the face. The vice president thought it was just an accident, but I didn't have to worry about that, because she still had something prepared for this janitor. Suddenly, a man with a sewage tank in his hands began to quickly drive straight towards the guy. It was immediately clear that the man was not in control of the situation. The worker with the cart ran straight towards Hao Tian, while the hero did not even change his facial expression, but simply continued to calmly walk forward. At some point, he simply abruptly stepped aside. This time the girl again failed. To get Hao Tian she needed something more serious. In the end, the plumber simply flew further and tripped over some stone. As a result he himself was completely covered in this stinking water. The vice president couldn't believe her eyes how a simple janitor could get away with all her tricks so easily. Now she'll have to come up with something else. After that, the hero entered his boss's office. The man ordered him to sit down on a chair. They need to talk about something now. In fact, this was done so that the guy would sit on a previously broken chair. Although he was lucky to avoid everything that happened before, now he will definitely get caught. The guy, unsuspectingly, was about to sit on a chair. He could not understand why the head of the department looked so serious. But for some reason, the furniture turned out to be absolutely normal. Hao Tian calmly took a sitting position and asked what was the matter. Chu Yaoyao couldn't understand how this was possible. She checked everything on her own. This chair should have broken right now. The man, in turn, also expected a completely different outcome. Besides, he was not really going to talk about anything. Now he needs to improvise. The head of the department couldn't find anything better than to once again scold the cleaner for doing his job poorly. In his words, the worker left a complete mess after yesterday's shift. The hero, meanwhile, was thinking that if the person watching him has the ability to control the cameras, then he definitely occupies a high position. As punishment, his boss orders the guy to clean the bathrooms from the 1st to the 27th floor 3 times a day. Hao Tian does not see a problem in this and calmly goes to work. After which he calmly goes about his business, and the man is left alone in his office. How did this janitor manage to fool everyone? The head of the department decides to check how one can sit on this broken chair to see if it is really fully functional. To do this, the boss sits directly on him, but immediately feels a very sharp pain below. He should not have behaved so confidently. Now Chu Yaoyao was completely convinced that this janitor was not just an ordinary guy. This chair was definitely faulty. How could he pull this off? Right now the president of the company came into her room. The first thing she did was ask how her assistant's plan went, whether she managed to teach that fool a lesson. The vice president reported that dealing with Hao Tian was much more difficult than expected, and she had not even been able to rest properly all day. But she still had an ace up her sleeve. The girl had been planning to do something special for a long time. This situation simply forced her to do just that. Lin Yimu wondered what kind of secret technique this was. She came closer to her little sister and she secretly told her everything in her ear. When the snow goddess listened to everything to the end, she doubted it a little. Even she thought it was too much even for such a case. Chu Yaoyao thinks that her eldest is simply too kind, and she shouldn't worry about it at all. She can take care of everything herself for her sake. The company president agrees, plus she has a very important meeting this afternoon, so the vice president will be in charge for a while. The sister tells her that everything will be fine. She will definitely do her job well. The girl definitely shouldn't worry about this. After that, Chu Yaoyao continued to follow the hero. He was diligently cleaning the floors on one of the many floors as usual. At the same time, the guy understood perfectly well that his pursuer was watching him even now. When he was busy simply cleaning, this was very annoying. In search of answers, he thought that perhaps the girl he had offended a couple of days ago was behind everything, but he still had that photo, so most likely she would not dare to do this. But this cannot continue for long. Now Hao Tian must first determine where his pursuer is. This is quite difficult to do, but this person most likely should be located somewhere in the administrative department on the 8th floor. When the hero got up there, he was very embarrassed. There were very pretty young girls everywhere. This was the female army of the company president. The guy carefully examined everything for some time and at the same time tried to look natural, but none of these workers had anything to do with the surveillance. Now Hao Tian needed to think further, but now there is really too little information. Maybe she just needs to wait. Meanwhile, the vice president deliberately spilled a large amount of printer ink on the floor. Apparently this is part of her secret plan. All this liquid urgently needed to be removed. For this, of course, a cleaner was called. The hero was ordered to go up to the president's office as soon as possible. After all, the copy room is very dirty. The employee needs to immediately stop everything he is doing and remove this black liquid from the floor. The guy immediately realized that behind all this was the same person who was looking into the cameras. Now it would be even easier for him to fix this problem. If someone wants to deal with him, then he will happily play the game. He has already had to get out of situations that were 10 times more difficult many times. Hao Tian immediately after that went into the elevator and went up to the desired floor. When the doors opened, he immediately saw a rather strange picture. The first thing that caught his eye was the thick dark liquid that spread all over the floor and was already approaching his feet. Almost the entire room was covered in this substance. The girl did her best. Does she really think that anyone will believe that what happened was an accident? Chu Yaoyao immediately put on an innocent face and pretended that she was very sorry. It was just that her assistant was absent from work today and she had to replace her. The guy understood perfectly well that the boss did this on purpose, and he was interested in listening to her excuses, so he asked about it directly. The girl replied that she just accidentally dropped the ink, but even the most clumsy person in the world is not capable of this. Then the vice president continued to play her role. She also pretended that she was very afraid of her boss. If the president saw this, she would be very angry. During his life, Hao Tian met many different people who wanted to deceive him and even kill him, but none of them succeeded. They only brought death upon themselves. The hero tells Chu Yaoyao that she can handle this mess in just a few minutes, but she should be more careful next time. The vice president, in turn, was surprised. Is the boss really not at all interesting to him as a woman? She is a real beauty. What's wrong with this guy? At some point, the girl thought that her charm was decreasing with age, but this is complete nonsense. The beauty is still beautiful. She will be able to charm the hero in any case. Hao Tian, in turn, could not understand why his boss looked so happy. Was she really so satisfied with this stupid dirty trick? Suddenly Chu Yaoyao came closer and looked at the guy's badge. As it turned out, she has a younger brother with the same name. This is just an incredible coincidence. It was immediately clear that the beauty was trying to seduce the hero. He, in turn, noticed that the button on the girl's collar seemed about to come off. The vice president pretended to be embarrassed. What a bad person this employee is. He thinks only of one thing. Does he really have nowhere else to look? In fact, her acting turned out to be poor. She is still too young and inexperienced to play such games. When Chu Yaoyao realized that her plan was not going as planned, the girl began to get angry. How dare he behave like that? 10 minutes later the room was already clean. The beauty praised the cleaner. He was a real good guy. You could get a bonus for such work. However, Hao Tian simply asks if there is any other work for him. If that's all, then he needs to go, because he still has a lot of other things to do. Suddenly the girl asks the hero to wait a little. Today he had a hard day because of her mistake. She prepared tea for him as a thank you. The guy, in turn, replies that everything is fine. Besides, he is not tired at all and doesn't want to drink now. Most likely there is something wrong with this tea. Chu Yaoyao really put a large dose of a certain drug into the drink. If he doesn't drink it now, then all the work done will be in vain. Therefore, the vice president decides to put pressure on emotions and claims that she has never offered tea to anyone before. By the way, it is quite difficult to prepare. Is Hao Tian really so harmful? In the end, the hero agrees. In fact, he was not at all afraid of such nonsense. Now he was wondering what this whole performance was for. It was impossible to determine what was in it by the smell of the drink, but most likely the girl used some kind of laxative. Even the Supervirus couldn't help but kill this guy, and a small dose of medicine certainly wouldn't make him worse. After a few seconds, he completely emptied the glass. Chu Yaoyao was happy when she saw it, and the employee thanked the boss. It was very refreshing. However, now that the beauty has made her move, she shouldn't blame Hao Tian for self-defense, because if he doesn't resist, he won't be able to live up to her expectations. That is why the guy, using his unique ability, will do the same with the girl. She will feel what pain in the stomach is. After this, the hero wants to tease the vice president a little. He suddenly screams. In response to this, the girl was even a little scared. The guy wants to tell you that he has recently started noticing strange things and he is interested in hearing Chu Yaoyao's opinion on this matter. The vice president could not understand what this employee wanted from her. As it turned out, Hao Tian reveals all his cards and says that most likely the girl from the company management was offended by him. Indeed, in the last 2 days, he began to notice that wherever he went, cameras were constantly watching him, and in order to turn this around, someone from the administrative department was needed. The vice president was surprised by the guy's insight. He quickly managed to guess everything, and she replies that there is nothing strange about it. The hero says that at first he also thought so, because he is just a simple cleaner. His position in the company does not fit in with such attention. This could only mean one thing: someone from the company management fell in love with him, because he is a very good and kind person. However, at the same time, it's a little creepy, because he has no money or connections, which means that the woman who is spying on him cannot find anyone better. Apparently she is very stupid and also ugly, and her character is even worse. These words hurt Sister Lin Yuma to the heart. How can he allow you to say such things? After this, Chu Yaoyao increases the bacterium of the virus that was added to his tea and is going to infect the girl in the same way. This was his plan. The guy put the molecule in his hand, and then touched the vice president's shoulder with it. He also thanks her for the fact that the boss listened to him. And now the hero must finally return to work, because he still had quite a lot to do, and very little time left. Chu Yaoyao could not recover from such insults against her little sister for a long time. This janitor really behaves incredibly impudently. However, in just 3 hours everything will change. She really wants to see what this smart guy will do when the laxative takes effect on him. As it turned out, this virus does not begin to act immediately, but after about 3 hours. Right now the guy was standing at the bus stop and waiting for his bus. He was a little upset that he would not see his boss feel the effect of the medicine. Suddenly a very expensive red car drove up to him. As it turned out, it was the vice president. She pretended that an incredible coincidence had happened. The girl did not expect to meet him here after work. The hero immediately understood that the boss was planning something else. She probably wanted to put Hao Tian in an even more humiliating position. Chu Yaoyao thanks the worker for helping her out this afternoon. The girl considers it her duty to thank him and treat him to dinner. The guy began to say that in fact this was unnecessary, but at the same time he was not at all embarrassed to confidently climb into the salon. First of all, he asked where they would eat now. As it turned out, it was one of the best places in the area. The vice president added gas. At that moment the car picked up enormous speed. Soon the hero will see everything with his own eyes. At some point, Hao Tian notices that they have already left the city. Don't they need to go to a restaurant? Are they really going to some village? In fact, the girl just wanted to take him away and see how this smart guy would behave in a place where there was not a single toilet. Therefore, she lies to him that they are going to the same farm with a restaurant. They say it's so delicious there that she really wants to try it too. Hao Tian, in turn, immediately guessed everything. His boss definitely wants to see how he will behave in such a humiliating situation. But to her great regret, Chu Yaoyao did not realize that right now she was about to taste her own medicine. Its effect should begin very soon. In fact, there were exactly 5 seconds left. Right now both the driver and passenger of the car began to count down this time. However, for some reason, nothing happened at all. The girl began to think what could have gone wrong in her plan. Was the drug really spoiled? Or it has expired? In any case, nothing worked. Now she needs to find a way out of this situation. Suddenly, Chu Yaoyao felt a very strong pain in her stomach. It was so terrible that she could hardly continue to drive the car. At the same time, she could not understand what was happening to her. The girl did not eat anything today that could lead to such bad feelings. The pain in her stomach had not gone away for several minutes. The vice president could no longer stand it. apparently she would have to stop right in the middle of the road. It was no longer possible to endure this torment, so Chu Yaoyao opened the doors and took some napkins. Now she needs to hurry. Hao Tian sarcastically asked his boss where she went, because there was no restaurant here. In response to this, the girl called him a fool and ordered him to forget about food, and then quickly walked as deep into the bushes as possible. And the guy continued to mock her and asked why she needed to go into the thicket, because it might be unsafe there. In fact, she could have simply said that she wanted to go to the toilet, otherwise the hero thought that his boss had some strange fetishes. The vice president became even more angry when she heard this. What can even come to mind when a person runs into the bushes with a piece of paper? She's trying to walk a little further so that this fool and the cars passing nearby won't notice her. She's already had enough shame for today. Suddenly the hero asks her to be as careful as possible, because there are often snakes here. If one of them bites the beauty, then she should call for help. In fact, Hao Tian just mocked the girl once again. She couldn't believe that this idiot would allow himself to behave like this to her. At some point, Chu Yaoyao became much worse. Now the cutting pain in her stomach had spread to her entire body. It seemed that she was about to lose consciousness. After this, the girl began to cough very badly. She could not come to her senses. Her body was literally weakening every minute. After some time, the vice president could no longer stand on her feet normally, and her arms and legs began to shake violently. What was wrong with her? The hero notices that his boss has been gone for quite a long time. Could something bad happen to her? All this time, he was completely confident that such an insignificant virus could not in any way harm a person and cause serious consequences. Therefore, Hao Tian decides to wait a little longer, while some anxiety was visible on his face, and a drop of sweat even appeared on his cheek. After a couple of minutes, Chu Yaoyao finally returned, but she looked pretty bad. From her appearance, it immediately became clear that the girl was very ill. She only had enough strength to ask the guy for help in a very quiet voice. He should call an ambulance for her as soon as possible. And after this, the beauty loses her last strength and falls unconscious. The hero barely managed to catch her. Now he must urgently help her. For some reason, the vice president started bleeding from his mouth. Apparently Hao Tian did something wrong at the moment when he tried to infect the boss with a simple virus. The hero did not know what to do at this moment. There are most likely too few hospitals in the world that can help her. He should deal with this himself. It was necessary to act very quickly, because most likely the girl had very little time left. If he did not have time to fix everything, she would die. The first thing the hero does is use his unique ability to pull out the bacteria from Chu Yaoyao's body, which usually always works. However, this time something went wrong. For some reason the virus absolutely did not want to obey and rejected any attempts to touch it. At this moment, Hao Tian was quite scared. At this rate he risks being late. This girl is about to leave this world. In fact, since the extraction failed, the only way to fix the situation is to eliminate the offending virus completely. This was a way in which a disease is fought with the help of another disease. This method is quite complex and dangerous, but now there was no choice. In addition, there was a high risk that this would not work at all, in which case not only Chu Yaoyao would die, but also the hero himself. To do this, the guy needs to use his special visualization to increase the bacteria several hundred times. And after that, invest as much energy as possible and turn an ordinary bacterium into something much more advanced. After some time, the virus began to change greatly. From an ordinary cell it began to turn into something resembling an intelligent creature. In the end, the result was a rather creepy creature. It was nothing more than a complete visualization of the virus that was in the body of the vice president. This creature immediately began to behave very viciously and hostilely. Most likely it could attack the guy at any moment. This is the first time in his life that he has seen this. This creature looked quite ugly. Now he needs to destroy it as soon as possible. To do this, Hao Tian took out a secret weapon from the soles of his boots. It was a small but very sharp knife. He didn't want to stay here for long. Therefore, he will simply eliminate this terrible creature with a few blows. After all, the guy himself called him into this world. Immediately after this, the creature rushed at the hero with terrible screams. Most likely its main weapon was the ugly purple tentacles on its hands. Fortunately, Hao Tian could still move quite well and managed to dodge at the right moment. Now he had the opportunity to counterattack. To inflict as much damage as possible on the enemy, the hero put special molecules into the blade of his knife. Because of this it seemed to begin to burn. And after that, with one strong and fast blow, he cut the monster in half. This vile yellow creature will not harm anyone again. The guy would never have thought that he would have so many problems because he used his ability. He needs to think better about his actions. Now he would always act carefully, otherwise there was a very high chance of harming both himself and the people around him. This virus turned out to be quite strong. It took a lot of effort to eliminate it, and now the guy's body may simply not be able to withstand it. Hao Tian began to bleed from his mouth and began to have a severe headache. In trying to save his boss, he caused enormous damage to himself. The hero survived many dangerous missions and even on them he never managed to get such serious injuries. Is he really going to die here now because he released a minor virus using his power? After some time, Chu Yaoyao came to her senses. It was already evening on the street very soon. She could not understand what had happened to her. Having come to her senses a little, the girl gets up from the ground. She still didn't feel well. She had a pretty bad headache. But this couldn't be compared to the state she was in a few hours ago. Her stomach didn't really hurt at all. Suddenly the vice president notices that Hao Tian is lying next to her. He was unconscious, and there was a rather large pool of blood next to him. The girl tried to find out what happened to the guy and why so much blood poured out of his mouth, but he was not going to come to his senses. Chu Yaoyao immediately realized that the hero saved her, but in the end he himself suffered greatly, although she did not understand how this happened, but she was obliged to help. To do this, the vice president immediately took out her phone and called an ambulance. The doctors should arrive at the right place in a few minutes. In fact, the guy did not completely lose consciousness, but was simply in a painful shock. At that moment he remembered his past. As it turned out, Hao Tian lost his parents in early childhood. He was adopted by an old man and raised as a son for a long time. Until the age of 8, the boy lived in the mountains and studied a variety of medical books and textbooks, although this was not particularly interesting to him. And already at the age of 12, he independently learned to dissect a corpse and examine various parts of the human body. Then the young man was sure that his future destiny was to become a doctor, but everything turned out completely differently. The war made its own adjustments to everything. The old fool sent his adopted son into the very mouth of the volcano. Every day he was on the verge of death. But still, the war does not last forever, and after its end the guy went on a trip around the world, although he thought that he would now become a hired soldier. The hero was young and very cold-blooded, so he did not leave anyone even the slightest chance to survive, and when he saved enough money, he decided to get out of this dark business. To do this, his adoptive father faked the guy's death, after which the old man asked his son to join the national division as a freelance agent. This old man was too good at his job, so when Hao Tian received his new documents, no one had any questions about his new identity. But one day, while he was on a mission, he received a message that his adoptive father had died and gave him a small wooden box as an inheritance. It was written in the will that the guy would be able to open it only when he became strong enough. This old man always behaved very mysteriously. The next day the hero tried to open it and did everything possible to do this, but it did not give any results. After which he threw himself into work and spent a lot of time on assignments with a group of Secret Service agents. This continued until that mission in Africa. For Hao Tian, this was a chance to get a normal life. He believed that it was great to have a quiet job, but many people do not know how to appreciate such little things. After some time, the hero was taken to the hospital. Chu Yaoyao first of all asked the doctor how her savior was feeling now. The doctor asked her to go to a quiet place and said that the patient was fine, just a little weak. The girl's tests were also checked and she was healthy. The vice president couldn't believe her ears how this was possible, because just a couple of hours ago she felt like she was going to die. All this said that Hao Tian was able to get her out of the other world at the cost of his own health. He really sacrificed himself. When the guy was lying unconscious in a hospital bed, some changes suddenly began to occur in his body. An unusual aura appeared around him. As a result of this, all of his bones and muscles seemed to have moved to another level of strength. Now they were stronger and stronger, at least 3 times. When this happened, the guy immediately came to his senses, although he still didn't understand where he was, but fortunately everything was fine with him. At the same time, Hao Tian clearly understood that something incomprehensible had happened to his body, because all the pain instantly evaporated somewhere. Had all the meridians really been cleared, the hero would never have thought that he would be able to cross the border that he could not break for years, only after being near death. The guy's strange behavior attracted his roommate. The man looked at him with a surprised look and could not understand what was happening. Hao Tian was able to become several times stronger simply by using his inner strength to make brute force calculations. It was simply incredible. Perhaps with his current powers, he will finally be able to open the box that his late adoptive father left him. Chu Yaoyao heard that her savior had come to his senses and went into his room with a basket of fruits. She asked how the patient was feeling. The hero replied that everything was fine with him. He was also glad that his boss was also absolutely healthy, which means the sacrifices were not in vain. The girl sincerely thanks Hao Tian for her help, because she survived only thanks to him. She had no doubts about it. In fact, the guy was worried about one question, because in their days you can thank for salvation a little differently. Chu Yaoyao didn't quite understand what he was talking about, and the patient completely misunderstood the hero's words and decided not to disturb this couple. However, Hao Tian had something completely different in mind. He just looked at the calendar and realized that he had not come to work for several days. His boss recommends not to worry about this, because she can take a vacation for him without any problems. Their company treats its employees very humanely. The guy noticed that this girl looks very smart, but does she really not understand what they want from her? He is very poor, and therefore will not be able to pay for the hospital bill. In fact, the girl has already fully paid for his treatment, so all he can do is rest and recover as quickly as possible. The hero felt a little awkward. His boss should have told this much earlier, because he had been worried about it all day. However, now he wanted to talk about how much his help that day cost. Chu Yaoyao still couldn't understand what he meant. Hao Tian hints that the vice president herself understands the whole situation. If he had not come to the rescue then, she would definitely have left this world. The girl, of course, was grateful to him, but isn't this man behaving too self-confidently? He really is a complete fool. Chu Yaoyao says that he can pay 1,000 for this service, but the guy says that this is too little. At this time it is not even enough to pay the bills. In this case, the vice president is ready to pay him 10,000, but the hero does not believe that such a beauty can value her own life at that amount. The girl couldn't believe that this fool dared to demand so much money from her. Did he really expect to get 100,000 from her? This really was so. After all, she is from the president's office, which means that such an amount is like a drop in the bucket for her. The vice president was furious at such statements, but tried to restrain herself and replied that before making a deal, she needed to discuss one issue. She really wanted to know if Hao Tian had taken advantage of his position when the girl was lying on the ground unconscious and completely helpless. Thus, the boss wanted to threaten the hero that if he continued to demand money from her, then she could sue him. Moreover, Chu Yaoyao also saved his life after the guy lost consciousness, so we can say that they are even. After this, the hero understands that it is better not to argue with this beauty, so he asks her to forget about the money. Everything was fine anyway. When the girl heard this, she immediately changed her expression to a smile. This fool really thought that he could trick her. For that matter, the hero was no longer going to lie here. Since his health is excellent, he wants to go home. This way, he will at least be able to take back the deposit for his treatment, and Hao Tian will thus receive the money for his treatment back. As a result, he really managed to pull it off. Now the guy had 20,000 in his hands. It was pretty good. The hero was very happy when the funds were given to him. The boss paid a deposit of several thousand. This will be enough for him for a while. By the way, she still hasn't told Hao Tian her name. The vice president finally said her name. Now they officially know each other. The guy calls Chu Yaoyao's name very beautiful, and now that everything is over, he has some things to do. They will only meet in the office. As it turned out, the beauty was going to invite him to dinner today, but now this fool can forget about such an offer. And she was also very interested in one thing. For some reason this guy now looked much healthier than before. After some time, Hao Tian was already at home. More than anything, he wanted to quickly find a small wooden box and open it. However, he could not find the thing. He had already rummaged through absolutely all the cabinets in his house, but it was nowhere to be found. Only a few hours later the hero remembers that he had been using this thing as a stand under the corner of the table for quite a long time. His adoptive father must have left him something good as an inheritance. He needs to take a closer look at what's inside. Even with his current strength, the guy did not immediately manage to open this box. The elderly man really hid everything securely. In the end, after a few minutes he still succeeds, and there was nothing valuable inside, only some kind of tablet with hieroglyphs. Hao Tian continued to silently look inside for some time and wondered if this was really all that was left to him as an inheritance. And after that he got very angry and threw the trinket on the floor, and for this he had to work for so many years and gain strength. This old fool, even after death, manages to mock his adopted son as much as possible. It's just funny. The hero couldn't stop thinking about it until the evening. He was so angry with his adoptive father that he couldn't calm down. At the same time, the wooden box was behind his back all this time. At some point it began to glow with an unusual blue light. Suddenly, an image appeared from behind her that looked exactly like the person who took the guy from the orphanage many years ago. Hao Tian didn't even notice him right away. He paid attention to what was happening only when this incomprehensible spirit addressed him directly. The guy turned around and couldn't believe his eyes. Could it really be his adoptive father? But what does that even mean? As it turned out, this was a message from an elderly man. He is sure that when his son watches this video, he will no longer be alive. The hero thought that this old man once again wanted to play some kind of game with him and came up with a strange task for him, or something like that. However, everything was different. The spirit claimed that if Hao Tian could see him, it meant that his power had reached the point of clearing the meridians. This was both good and bad. And in fact, this man died not from old age, but from a severe injury that he received in a martial arts competition. The hero couldn't believe what he just heard. Had he really had to live in ignorance for so many years? What else had his adoptive father been hiding from him all this time? As it turns out, the old man is actually the head of the palace of an ancient sect. This organization was in a very protracted conflict with another clan. Therefore, every 30 years, both sides compete according to the rules of martial arts, each sect exhibiting several of its best fighters. Today, the enemy clan has a huge advantage, because their organization only had 3 disciples in the last generation. And now it's even worse. The elderly man suddenly extended his hand forward and pointed his index finger straight towards the guy. As strange as it may sound, Hao Tian is the only disciple of their martial arts palace in this generation. The guy had a hard time believing it. That tablet that is in a small wooden box is actually an ancient book, a masterpiece of their school. He must practice well to restore the former strength of their clan. The hero was very angry when he found out all this. This old man was always hiding something from him. Isn't this just a new way to send him to certain death? His adoptive father knew everything in advance and understood perfectly well that his son would behave in exactly this way, so he prepared one thing in advance. As it turned out, at the moment when the guy opened this little thing, he was poisoned by a very rare poison. If he fails to learn the special technique from the book, he will not live even 10 years. Hao Tian could not believe that this old idiot was ruining his life even while in the next world and rushed to the box, but the spirit immediately disappeared. This book, like the technique that is described in it, was called the subjugation of the 9 heavens and stars. Now the hero needs to persistently improve. If he succeeds, not only will he get rid of the poison in his body, but he will also be able to achieve a new realm. The elderly man realizes that his son is now furious, but he should just accept it. He is destined to become the heir. After the incident, the guy wondered how the supervirus in his body would come into contact with the new poison that he had recently received. Since he has not yet died, they are able to get along side by side. The only question was how long this could last. At the same time, he does not have the strength to destroy the new poison in the same way that he used before. Hao Tian is still too weak for such tricks. Apparently because of this stupid old man, the guy will never have a chance to start living like a normal person. Does he really have such a stupid fate? However, you need to look for your pluses in everything. Although the old man is not trustworthy, in fact, this book can be very useful. It said that there are 6 layers, and it also says that even the geniuses of the previous generation could not break through even to the 3rd. It seems that this secret technique is indeed very difficult to cultivate and requires a lot of experience. The 9 heavens technique is divided into 2 parts. one focusing on the use of elixirs and acupuncture, and the other on developing internal energy. However, at one moment a creator appeared who tried to subjugate this force. It seemed to him that the internal energy limited everything too much. Therefore, he changed the technique and called it True Qi. Its main advantage was internal energy, which has an inexhaustible supply. If Hao Tian continues like this, his power will increase significantly, but most likely, in order to defeat that sect, he will need to break through to the third layer. Then a new world will literally open up before him, because the guy will have the opportunity to improve the elixir of longevity and live up to 3,000 years. It was simply wonderful. Then the hero would be able to eat and drink deliciously for the rest of his life, because no one had managed to pull this off before. However, at the moment, this was still a long way off. His abilities were very far from ideal. He needed to train hard every day. The only plus was that the next competition between clans was 20 years away, which should be enough time to study. Most likely, studying this technique will really become his main occupation for the next couple of years. Suddenly his phone rang. As it turned out, Chu Yaoyao called him. Only now Hao Tian realized that today he again did not go to work because of all these events. When the guy answered the phone, the boss immediately started yelling and scolding him. He made excuses and said that he had very important things to do. The vice president called him a fool, but the boss is ready to help him and will take a day off for him, but asks him not to do that again. The hero promises that he will definitely improve, and as a sign of gratitude for the help he wants to invite the girl to dinner tomorrow evening. Chu Yaoyao was very surprised by this proposal. Did this guy really decide to invite her on a date to a restaurant? At some point, Hao Tian himself realized that he had gotten a little carried away, wondering if he had enough money to satisfy a young lady like her. If his boss ate some Western food and then drank a bottle of 200-year-old Lafite, his strategic reserve of 20,000 would simply dissolve. The vice president suggests discussing this a little later, because men who also want to invite her to dinner are already standing in a kilometer-long line. The hero was happy. Maybe he will be lucky now and keep the money to himself. The guy is really unworthy of such an incredible woman. However, to his great regret, Chu Yaoyao suddenly changed her mind and is ready to go to dinner with him as an apology. At that moment, the hero realized that everything was lost. Now he would definitely have to spend all his modest reserves on expensive wine. At this point their conversation was over. Hao Tian hung up and was about to cry a little, but suddenly someone else called him. As it turned out, it was Song Ronrong. Suddenly the guy had a little hope of survival. Perhaps his girlfriend was going to repay the debt. With an inspired face, he picked up the phone and asked her about it, but the girl could not pay yet. She was calling for another reason. Suddenly, instead of a pleasant female voice, a rough male bass voice was heard on the phone, calling the hero a red scarf. Hao Tian didn't even understand what we were talking about at first. He invented this organization literally on the fly. Was Song Ronrong really trying to prank him? In fact, he didn't have time for such nonsense, so the hero says into the microphone that he needs to go and will hang up now. However, a man's voice informs him that the girl is now his hostage. She can even say hello to her dear friend. Only after this did the guy realize that someone had kidnapped his friend. But what do these villains want from him? Do they really want a ransom in the form of money? The girl, in turn, asks her friend not to come anywhere. He should just call the police as soon as possible. When the bandit heard this, he became very angry. How could this stupid girl allow herself to behave like this? Now Hao Tian had no other choice. He is trying to find out from the kidnappers what they need from him. The villain says that the hero must arrive within 30 minutes to the address that he will now receive on his phone, but if he has a desire to take the police with him, Song Ronrong will die. The guy replied that he would be there at the specified time, but if even one hair fell from his girlfriend's head, they would greatly regret it. At this point their conversation was over. The gang leader threw his phone into the hands of Huang Mao. An important guest would soon visit them. The villains were already fully prepared. About a dozen of the most cruel and aggressive hooligans were present in this warehouse. Song Ronrong was very afraid at this moment. First of all, she didn't want the guy to risk his life trying to save her. The girl believed that he should never come here, but Hao Tian had already decided everything and was heading to the indicated address. At some point, Huang Mao approached the hostage and threatened her with death. When they dealt with her friend, they would immediately kill the girl. However, His assistant reminds him that the enemy is quite strong, and although they have a numerical advantage, there was still a risk of losing. The villain, in turn, didn't even want to listen to such nonsense. He was their boss, which meant that they could handle it in a few minutes. The gang leader ordered them to shut up immediately. They don't even understand what they are talking about. There are people in their city that this bald gangster fears. After that, he approached the girl and told her that he was not at all the kind of person who did evil for the sake of evil. He was able to distinguish bad from good. And if her savior nicknamed Red Scarf really arrived here at the specified time, then he would never dare to harm Song Ronrong. But Huang Mao did not agree with this, because it was because of her that he lost his beautiful face. The gang boss, in turn, did not even want to listen to this nonsense. How is he not ashamed to carry such nonsense? At the same time, the bald gangster still looked quite creepy. It was difficult to say what was really on his mind and what his real intentions were. It is quite possible that after killing the Red Scarf, he will harm the girl. People like him always use their power. However, for now, he was explaining to his subordinate that he was beaten by another person, and Song Ronrong had nothing to do with it. Huang Mao still couldn't calm down. The bandit thought that his boss was going to take this girl as his prey. The boss is very sorry that these two fools have to go through all this, but he has no choice. He hopes for understanding on their part. After this, the man introduces himself. His name is Wang Tao. He wants to convince the hostage that she can call him her brother. After this whole situation, the girl can count on his protection. The words of a person like him have a certain weight in their city. The bandit also apologizes to the hostage for the behavior of his subordinates. He will certainly atone for his guilt in the future. Song Ronrong asks the man not to go that far. If he spares her friend, she will definitely answer them later. However, this pervert had only one thing on his mind. He didn't need any money. The girl could only pay in one way. He also reveals that as a country that has its own laws, they have their own rules. The villain can save Hao Tian's life. However, before that, this brat is obliged to come to him and explain everything that happened. Wang Tao suddenly hit the hostage in the face with his palm. Song Ronrong was very angry about this. This idiot will definitely get what he deserves, and the gang leader is surprised how this girl is not afraid to talk to him in such a tone. It's better for her not to provoke a person like this bandit. If you stay with him for some time, it will become clear what his character is. Now he's just pretending to be better than he really is. Suddenly, the doors to the warehouse burst open with a very loud sound. Everyone present was very surprised whether this guy had really appeared. The hero arrived at the indicated place much faster than expected. It was clear from his face that he was determined to teach these scoundrels a lesson. Huang Mao immediately recognized this man. The bandit would not forget this face for the rest of his life. That situation a few weeks ago hurt him greatly. Hao Tian fulfilled all the conditions and came to the meeting alone, without reinforcements in the form of police. From the side it may seem that he is crazy. His girlfriend was very angry when she saw the guy, how he was smart enough to come here alone, and even without weapons. These freaks are armed to the teeth. She also asked her friend to run away immediately, but Wang Tao argued that this brat would never be able to leave here. The hero found himself in a very dangerous situation. 6 villains came out against him at once, and besides, they all had bladed weapons with them. The leader calmly sat down on a chair and praised the guest for his courage. Not every man would dare to come here in splendid isolation. He even began to respect this guy a little. It seems he really has character, but at the same time this act is incredibly arrogant. In response to this, Hao Tian replied that he himself perfectly understands his strengths, and this idiot had better worry about his hair. The rest of the bandits couldn't believe their ears. Did this crazy guy really decide to make a joke at such a moment? Wang Tao was enraged by what he heard. Apparently this brat really wants to die today. He generally understands whose territory he is now on. However, the hero did not even want to answer this question, but simply turned to his friend and asked her not to worry. A little more and they would both leave here. She also doesn't have to worry about money, because today his company has a special offer. He will deal with these scoundrels for free. Hao Tian notices his old friends. These 2 losers were also here. How worthless they are to put on such a show here. The guy didn't even expect that by beating these weaklings he accidentally damaged their brains. Such behavior is simply impossible to explain in any other way. Huang Mao told the Red Scarf to shut up immediately. If he leaves here today, it will only be in a coffin. The bandit swears that he will do it with his own hands. Hao Tian simply did not listen to this chatter, but calmly turned his head towards Wang Tao and asked whether he really had the courage to hit the girl. The leader recommends that he not worry about it. Now he has more serious problems. This fool first of all needs to think about himself. This answer was enough for the hero. Now he was sure that it was this bald villain who dared to harm Song Ronrong. In addition, the guy could not understand how such worthless people as these bandits managed to gain a foothold in such a good city as Fuyang. These ridiculous fools cannot even be called a criminal group. Comparing them to the Yakuza or the Italian Mafia was simply ridiculous. Wang Tao couldn't understand what was wrong with this brat. How could a person in his position remain so confident? His face looked too calm. At first glance, it may seem that he is just a poor and gloomy boy who most likely does not have a person who would stand up for him. At this moment, one of the bandits got tired of just standing still and he rushed at the hero with a bat. Hao Tian, in his usual manner, did not even try to dodge such a slow and weak blow, but simply stood in his place. And at some point, he knocked out the villain with one precise and strong kick. The attack turned out to be very strong. Now this bandit is unlikely to be able to fight further. Huang Mao watched from the side and couldn't even understand what had happened. This man's movements were so fast that everything that was happening looked like some kind of movie. Now it became clear to everyone that this was an unusual person. This guy was at least a professional fighter and an expert in martial arts. But in reality it didn't matter. Right now he would leave this world. Wang Tao orders everyone to immediately rush to the attack. All these bandits are obliged to fight to the end and show their maximum. At this time the hero was waiting for the best moment for a successful counterattack. Huang Mao was very happy when he watched what was happening. His boss was very angry. Now this fool will pay with blood for everything he has done. However, Hao Tian definitely did not intend to die in this place. It was not difficult for him to instantly neutralize the two attackers. Two bandits immediately dropped their bats and flew several meters to the side. Suddenly another villain jumped out at the guy. The conversation with him also turned out to be short. With the help of one precise blow with his fist, the hero manages to knock him out. After that, Hao Tian jumped high into the air. He ended up directly above two more scoundrels. In fact, they didn't even have a chance to dodge. After all, the hero's movements were much faster than those of an ordinary person. Thanks to this it was very easy for him to knock out one enemy after another. In the end, after just a few minutes, all the bandits were defeated. Wang Tao could not believe his eyes. Could such people really exist? This guy managed to defeat all of his charges without even getting a scratch, something that rarely happens even in films. Sun Ronrong was no less surprised. She, of course, understood that her friend had certain abilities, but this was something truly incredible. And Huang Mao, in turn, sharply changed his opinion about the hero. Now the last thing he wanted was to quarrel with such a person. Therefore, he sharply fell to his knees and begged for mercy. In fact, he was just a fool who interfered with my business. This will not happen again. Hao Tian is once again surprised at how worthless a person can be. This weakling's time has simply not come yet. He will definitely deal with him, but he will do it a little later. He just has more important things to do now. However, the blonde bandit didn't even listen to him. This weakling was so scared that he simply bowed all the time and asked him to have mercy. And the assistant simply asked to look at everything with sober eyes, because this time he really had nothing to do with it, and besides, it wasn't all his idea. Wang Tao praised the hero. This man truly had unique abilities. The man had never seen such a thing before. The guy believed that the leader most likely also had something wrong with his head, because any normal person would have immediately run away after what he saw. However, the bald gangster looked quite calm and continued to say, he has been in this business for many years, but this is something new. Hao Tian was sure that this villain would now simply take a gun out of his pocket. He should do it at least a little faster. Everything turned out exactly as the guy expected, but why is he acting so self-confident? Because this weapon is definitely real. For some reason, Wang Tao was very scared when he saw the gun. Is this really the first criminal in the world who is afraid of gunfire? But everything turned out to be a little simpler. This idiot once again switched sides and now suggested that the hero get on his knees as soon as possible. This behavior had already infuriated even his boss, so he hit the blonde bandit in the face with all his might. How can a weakling like him still manage to behave like this? If this nonentity says one more word, he will get a bullet in his head. Hao Tian turned to the gang leader and asked, he is holding a Glock 17 in his hands right now, just don't say that the bald gangster loaded it with domestic bullets. After all, they can explode. Wang Tao was even more surprised by this behavior. The guy did not panic even at the sight of a firearm, but there was no turning back. Therefore, the man pointed the muzzle of his pistol directly at the hero's forehead. Does he really think that his fists are capable of outrunning the bullet? The gang leader respects this man as a man. If he admits his mistakes, he can count on a pardon, but otherwise his life will end here. Hao Tian even reacted calmly to this. In fact, this bald gangster continues to stand here for only one reason. Wang Tao couldn't understand what this madman was talking about now. Could it be that even the weapon aimed directly at his head was useless? The guy explains that if the bandit had fired his gun, he would already be dead, but he is just an ordinary weakling who is afraid to take a step. The gang leader insisted on his own and assured that he was not at all afraid to pull the damn trigger, and now he was giving this fool one last chance. At this moment, the hero saw the right moment and in one swift movement snatched the gun from Wang Tao's hands. Now the bald gangster had big problems, because his own weapon was pointed at him. The situation took a completely unexpected turn. Hao Tian asked the man how much he paid for this junk, which he calls a pistol. As it turned out, the weapon cost 50,000. Suddenly the guy hit the bandit on the head. Did this fool really pay that much money for such garbage? How can you not notice that this is actually a poor fake? The font on this pistol was so crooked that the weapon is unlikely to fire at least once. Wang Tao at that moment was completely confused and knelt down. In his entire life he had never found himself in such humiliating circumstances. The hero tried to reload the pistol, but the thing simply fell apart into small parts. How can a bandit have such a poor understanding of weapons? The gangster immediately began to make excuses and ask for forgiveness, but Hao Tian is not going to believe the words of such a person. He should be sincere. Suddenly, Wang Tao took out a knife from his pocket and stabbed his leg with all his might, thus trying to prove his determination. After this, the gangster asked the guy whether he should now believe in his words. After all, this was a rather painful procedure. However, Hao Tian was completely unimpressed by this performance. His actions were much worse than what he was doing to himself now. The bandit didn't come up with anything better than to do the same with his second leg. Now the hero will definitely believe him. But everything turned out to be completely wrong. The guy believed that there was still not enough sincerity in the bandit's actions. Did he really not have a drop of imagination? Unfortunately, Wang Tao no longer has legs that can be pierced with a knife, so he simply asks for forgiveness again. Besides, he has a mother and wife to take care of. The gangster promises that if he offends anyone again, he can be punished however Hao Tian wishes, and he won't even complain. And after that, the bandit turns to the girl and tries to press for pity, because he was very kind to her and continued to protect her even in the most difficult moments. Song Ronrong is too kind a person, so she thinks that this man has already suffered enough. She thinks that he will really change his behavior. In the end, the hero decides to let Wang Tao go, but only because he has people who need his help. By the way, Huang Mao's assistant, who was with him that evening a few weeks ago, could also be free. The bandit thanked the guy for such generosity. However, there was another point that Hao Tian wanted to discuss. In fact, when he talked about sincerity, he meant something else. The gangster thought that this kid was starting to blackmail and threaten him again, since he had already humiliated himself in front of him as best he could. But as it turned out, the guy meant moral compensation, because on the way here he spent quite a lot of money on a taxi, and he also wants to eat. Wang Tao even seemed to be happy with what he heard. The hero is really right. He should just tell the amount and he will reimburse everything. Hao Tian is actually a frugal person, so he only needs a little money. If the bandit gives him $1 million, then everything will be settled. The gangster had never heard anyone call $1 million a small amount. Would he really have to pay that much? However, there was no other choice. It was better to part with a lot of money than his own life. He promises to transfer the money tomorrow. Now everything was finally fine and the hero could free his girlfriend from the ropes. Now they can safely go home. But as soon as the friends headed towards the exit of the warehouse, Wang Tao suddenly turned to them and asked the guys to wait a little. As it turned out, the man wanted to give Hao Tian his business card. if he needed anything in the future, he could call the gangster at any time. The guy happily took the phone number and called the bandit a pretty smart person, and also thanked the man for his sincerity. But that was not all. The head of the gang also gave the hero the keys to his car, so it would be more comfortable for him to get back home. In fact, the man himself would have been happy to give them a lift, but due to the wounds on his legs he could not do this. Hao Tian even began to consider this bandit the best in the entire city. In addition, Wang Tao knew a lot about good cars. This car was not only very comfortable inside, but also remained quite fast. The girl thanked her friend for saving her once again. If not for his help, everything could have ended much worse. The hero asks her not to worry about this. After all, she was a client of his company, so Hao Tian is obliged to do everything to protect Song Ronrong. Moreover, she is the daughter of his good friend. He would not be able to live in peace if something bad happened to his girlfriend. The girl thought it was funny that the guy was not going to take money from her for today. Of course he didn't need it, he had just blackmailed a bandit for a whole million. However, Hao Tian doesn't think it was blackmail, it's called compensation for moral damages. She can't even imagine how nervous he was. Song Ronrong was very embarrassed when she heard this. Was her friend really that worried about her safety? Did he really care about her? But at some point the girl drives these thoughts away. What is she even thinking about? By the way, this man is friends with her father, there is no way they can be together. However, it is quite difficult to deceive feelings, so the beauty tried to admire her savior as discreetly as possible. After all, the hero looked really cool today, like a character from a movie shown on TV. Song Ronrong told her friend this directly. She really thinks he is amazing, he fights like a true master. However, the guy thinks that this is all absolute stupidity, there is nothing special about him. Hao Tian is used to considering himself absolutely ordinary. However, his girlfriend insists on his own, because he managed to defeat so many bandits single-handedly. Is anyone really capable of this? The girl invites him to change the relationship a little and wants to call him brother, but the hero is already used to being called by his name. Sun Ronrong, in turn, was offended by him. Is it so difficult to do? After all, their age difference is only a few years. Hao Tian reminds her that she and her father are old friends. It would be wrong if they started calling each other brother and sister. At this moment, the girl suddenly changed her expression. Most likely she felt a strong coldness in her friend's answer. After some time, they were finally near the house where Song Ronrong lives. The hero decided to follow his friend to the very end. At that moment, when the girl had almost entered the entrance, she suddenly told the guy that during their conversation she had a strange feeling. Hao Tian didn't understand what she was talking about at all. In fact, he was quite bad at such subtle matters. The beauty tried to explain to him that this feeling was like a high wall in his heart, because at first glance the hero is very sweet and caring. However, as soon as the girl makes attempts to get closer to him, he immediately pushes her away in every possible way. It is because of this that one gets the impression that this person is behind a large and cold wall that cannot be overcome. Hao Tian didn't even know what to answer to this. His girlfriend said two difficult things. He didn't even manage to graduate from primary school. Apparently Song Ronrong was just worried today and started talking nonsense. She should go home and have a good rest. In the end, a friend says that since childhood she envied children who had older brothers, which is why she really wanted to have such a person. She didn't have anything else in mind, and she also really liked the hero's driving style. His skills were even better than those of many drivers. And there's no need to even talk about his mastery of martial arts. The guy was so good that the first question that arose was why he didn't want to find a better job. Hao Tian replied that actually cleaning dirty things allows him to feel a certain pleasure, and is it bad to work as a cleaner? However, the girl was quite perceptive. Her friend did not need to lie. She was sure that he had to go through a lot in his life. That is why the guy always had such a sad face and tired look. His mind and body were very exhausted. This needs to be corrected as soon as possible. In response to this, the hero claims that she behaves like a little girl and embellishes everything too much, because he doesn't even have a driver's license. In fact, she definitely shouldn't worry about him. Isn't she herself tired today? She needs to go inside and sleep right now. Song Ronrong still insists on his own. In any case, she knows what Hao Tian is in his heart now, so he should think it over as best he can. The hero replies that he will definitely do exactly as his friend told him, and after that he leaves, she should also hurry up. The girl is sure that this man has gone through many things that she cannot even imagine. His fate is clearly very difficult. Although the guy didn't want to take Song Ronrong's words seriously, she really turned out to be too quick-witted. Sad thoughts themselves arose in his head. Suddenly the hero notices that the hatch in the car is open, only now it dawns on him why it was quite cold inside. Hao Tian suddenly thought that there were a lot of beautiful stars in the sky today, and the month looked very majestic and seemed to calm him down. The guy had already forgotten the last time he just looked at the night sky like that and admired the most ordinary things. Since now he will have a lot of money soon, the hero decides to celebrate this by withdrawing some funds and treating himself to something tasty. As soon as he took the money from the ATM, he noticed that some girl was standing next to him. Was she really going to rob him? This stranger looked too young to be a pickpocket. Will she decide to act at all or continue to stand still? The girl looked like an ordinary student at a local university. What made her take such a bad path? Hao Tian just wondered how this beauty was going to take his money. At first glance she didn't look dangerous. At some point, the beauty decides to act and jumps out right in front of the guy. As it turns out, she had no intention of robbing anyone. But the hero did not immediately understand this. The first thing he thought was that this was just her first robbery. This girl looked very unprofessional. The stranger immediately asked Hao Tian how much money he had put in his pocket just now. Although she looked harmless, the question turned out to be quite frank. The guy thought the same and answered whether the beauty thought such a question was too harsh, but the student actually wanted to provide her services. The hero did not immediately understand what was being said. The stranger with an embarrassed look hinted that she could make him happy and satisfied. After that, Hao Tian finally realized what the girl was talking about and hurried to leave. He was not interested in such services, she should look for someone else. However, to his great surprise, the student did not want to let him go and asked him to stop. Apparently she really urgently needed money. Then the stranger tries to convince the guy that she is asking for very little. He has the opportunity to do it for just a few thousand. Hao Tian was not interested in this anyway, and money had nothing to do with it. He just never liked using such services. Suddenly the girl begins to cry and begs the hero to agree. She is ready to do it for only 20,000. When the hero heard this, he was very surprised. Did this student really mistake him for a major? For that kind of money he could find two right now. As it turned out, this unfortunate girl had never been with a man before, but she was already an adult, and in general, she was still studying at the university. To prove this, she had a student ID with her. But what prompted this stranger to take such a step for the sake of several thousand? Hao Tian was quite tired today and didn't want to look into it, but simply advised the girl to forget about it and go home to rest. After all, her mother may be very worried about her now, so she shouldn't do such stupid things. She's still too young. Suddenly, the stranger began to cry even harder, and at the same time said that her mother was still in the hospital in serious condition. Apparently, she had no choice and lowered the price to 15,000, at which point the girl was completely confused and asked herself what she was doing. The guy notices this and tries to understand what is wrong with this stranger. Is she really doing this not of her own free will? At some point, her tear-stained face brought back old memories in his head, because he once looked exactly the same. He was very familiar with this feeling of absolute helplessness, when you are unable to influence the situation and at the same time maintain your dignity. Since the student really made such a decision, then she should go after him right now. They can't do this on the street. Right now they will go to the nearest hotel to rent a room there. Such a place should be suitable. The beauty entered the room and timidly sat down on the bed. From her behavior you can immediately understand that she absolutely did not want to do this. A few minutes later, Hao Tian returned to her with money in his hands. It took him a few minutes to withdraw the full amount. It turned out to be quite cold outside, so he asked the girl to pour him a glass of warm water to warm up. Suddenly the student asked her client to name his name. After all, she wanted to get to know this man at least a little better. However, the hero did not want to do this. Why did she need this information? After all, her work has nothing to do with this. However, the beauty continued to stand her ground. Was it really that difficult? By the way, this is very important in her understanding. In fact, Hao Tian just wanted to see the girl's reaction. he easily said his name, age and position in the company. At first, the student didn't even believe that this man really worked as a cleaner. Do they really pay that much now? However, the beauty believed that it does not matter what kind of job a person works in, the only important thing is what moral qualities are inherent in him. After this, the guy recommends that she go to the shower and freshen up, where she can finally decide whether she really wants it. The girl went to the bathroom and thought that this man was very different from all men. There was definitely something special about him. After all, most male representatives constantly looked at her with eyes full of lust. She had to deal with this many times. However, Hao Tian behaved very decently even in such a situation. Is he really doing this just to help her in a difficult situation? At the same time, something in his words still left questions about how, as a janitor, he could own such huge reserves of money. But all this really didn't matter. Now the girl just needs to play her role. That's the only way she'll have the opportunity to help her mother. After some time, the student came out of the shower and told her client that she was finished, while all she had on was a towel. The guy looked at her and again remembered the past. The beauty had the same lost face as he had many years ago. This made him sad. Suddenly he took a sheet from the bed and covered his friend with it. Had he really changed his mind and now would just go somewhere about his business? The stranger thought exactly this and asked him to stop, because if she doesn't earn money today, then everything will be lost. In fact, the hero is simply not in the mood today, but at the same time he always keeps his promises, so the girl will receive the full amount. However, first of all, she needs to name the reason for such an act. Only in this case can she count on his money. When the beauty heard this demand, she simply remained silent for several seconds, and after that she tried to clarify what was being said. Hao Tian first needs to understand why such a pretty girl suddenly decided to start selling herself. There definitely needs to be a good reason for this. It was clear from the stranger's face that she didn't want to talk about it at all, but for that matter, she could explain everything. It turned out that her mother is seriously ill and needs surgery. If the beauty cannot raise the money before tomorrow morning, then the woman will be in danger. The guy never expected to hear this, but would 20,000 be able to completely solve this issue and save my mother from illness? In response to this, the girl shook her head negatively. The hero could not understand what this stupid thing was going to do next. Did she really want to collect such a sum by selling herself? The beauty made it clear that she was ready to do absolutely any work. As long as her dear relative survived, she was ready to do anything for this. Hao Tian came up with one thing at this moment. He had a proposal that would solve the problem of medical bills. The guy is ready to give 200,000 for 2 years in advance. For this the girl will cook for him any time he needs it. However, it is worth remembering that this is not just a gift, but rather a loan, so she will have to repay the entire amount a little later. When the beauty heard this, she burst into tears. Was this man really so kind? She was very lucky today. At the same time, the hero believed that this was not entirely true, because he was literally hiring her for a job for which she would not receive any money at all. A few minutes later they were ready to sign a contract. According to these papers the stranger would receive the full amount within 3 days. At some point, the girl asked, "This is not Hao Tian's wife's money." In response to this she heard that she should talk less and hurry up. The beauty, without hesitation, signs her signature with a pencil. In fact, this was the only chance to help her relative. Now that everything was ready, the guy could finally go home and get some rest. This day had exhausted him very much. Before leaving, he reminded his new friend that she should no longer do such stupid things, otherwise her mother would be upset when she learned about it. The girl, in turn, invited Hao Tian to stay here, because it was already late. Apparently she was very grateful to him. The hero asked not to arrange such prices here, because he is still a man, and if he does this, he will simply cease to respect himself. After this, the guy goes about his business, and his new girlfriend is left alone. Fortunately this room has already been paid for. Therefore, the beauty could calmly stay here for the night. She once again had tears on her face. Today she really met a wonderful person. While Hao Tian was walking home, he was wondering if he had gone too far with his decision. He literally became the sponsor of a student he met a couple of hours ago. Because of these obsessive thoughts, he was unable to get a good night's sleep, so the hero came to work with absolutely no energy. Although he tried very hard to have a good rest, he didn't succeed at all. apparently now he'll have to work haphazardly. However, this day was still one of the best days of his life, because right now Wang Tao transferred as much as 1.5 million to his account. As it turned out, the man managed to find another additional 500,000. It seems that this bandit really has a very good head. It is quite possible that this person will be used in the future. After all, he has good connections throughout the city. As soon as the elevator doors opened in front of Hao Tian, he immediately noticed that his old friend was standing in front of her in very high heels. It was Lin Yumu. The hero turned to her and noted that it was a huge coincidence to meet her again. Would they really have to go to the top floor together? The president of the company didn't even immediately pay attention to the guy. She was still very angry with him, but tried to hide it. The girl decided to simply turn away and not pay attention to this janitor. In her opinion, he was not even worthy of talking to her. At some point, Hao Tian decides to remind his boss about that photo, since he can still post it on the forum at any time. Lin Yumu was very angry when she heard this. If this fool really did this, he would definitely regret it. She also called the guy a scumbag and a shameless person. The hero absolutely disagreed with this. Most likely he again wanted to tease the boss a little. So he came closer to her and claimed that she simply didn't know him too well, because in fact he was much worse. After all, Hao Tian is not just a scumbag and shameless, but a real villain and a completely shameless man who does whatever he wants. The director of the company at this moment was confused. This cleaner was behaving completely arrogantly. Could she really lose to him now? The girl couldn't just keep silent, so she ordered the hero to shut up. In her entire life she had never met such obscene and arrogant people. Now Hao Tian has the opportunity to hint to his boss that the girl actually fell in love with him and is thus trying to attract attention. Lin Yumu was enraged by such words. Why would she even fall in love with such a beggar as this janitor? At that moment she had the desire to kill the fool. At that moment, the elevator finally reached the desired floor and the doors opened. The girl immediately headed for the exit. More than anything else she wanted to go far away. Now the company president has even more reasons for revenge. Lin Yumu will definitely make this employee answer fully for his actions. Her sister watched this whole performance in the elevator. The situation turned out to be quite tense. What ultimately happened between them? Apparently Hao Tian really did something terrible, and it was because of this that Lin Yumu was so offended by him. Suddenly, her elder sister runs into her office. Now she urgently needs to find out how things are going with the janitor's punishment. As it turns out, Chu Yaoyao is now a little short of time. In fact, the vice president was more interested in another question. Why did her eldest not come to work for several days? Did she really have a boyfriend? Lin Yumu did not have any boyfriend, but despite this, it is quite possible that the girl will get married soon. Has she really been lying to her sister all these years? It turned out that they promised each other as children that they would only get married at the same time. The president of the company just wanted to discuss this. Her younger sister first assumed that it was again because of the man whose name was Xiao Lei. It was already a very long story. Lin Yumu's father was going to marry her off to this man, but she didn't want that at all, so she and her sister came up with a plan. The friends found a pregnant woman who, in front of Xiao Lei's parents and many of his friends, accused him of having the child with him. The company president thought that this idea had gone too far, but Chu Yaoyao insisted that they did everything right, because this man is a complete scum. The vice president doesn't even understand what's wrong with their father, since he's trying to marry off his beloved daughter to such a scumbag as Xiao Lei. After all, this man was very rich and influential, most likely the future heir to the position of president of a large company. In addition, this man is quite handsome and has good manners. Of course the older generation likes him. Her youngest still considered the future groom to be an ordinary hypocrite. She knew very well what this man really was like. Most likely all this is happening because their father is seriously ill and dying. The doctor said that he has very little time left. Chu Yaoyao didn't even know that the situation was so serious. Then that explains a lot, but in any case, the situation is too unfair. Suddenly the vice president has a great idea. How about showing up in front of the family with a new guy? Lin Yumu realized that her sister had once again come up with some stupid plan. What was it this time? But now it was just a great idea. If the president of the company finds himself a guy, it will completely correct the situation and satisfy everyone. However, how the ice goddess could find a partner so quickly was not a thing. her little sister couldn't believe that she was so stupid. After all, you can find a fake guy. Lin Yumu, in turn, thought that this was complete nonsense, everything would not go according to plan as usual. Chu Yaoyao decides to take the initiative. It won't be easy, but she will be able to find the right person to trust anyway. Her eldest finally agrees. Now she needs to go and deal with the accumulated affairs. After all, she did not show up for work for several days. Immediately after this, the vice president began to wonder which of her friends would best suit her role as a fake boyfriend. For some reason, as soon as the girl thought about this, the image of Hao Tian constantly popped up in her head. But why exactly him? It will be easy to persuade him, because a simple cleaner really needs money, but if the ice goddess finds out that she will have to pretend to be this man's girlfriend, then she will be seriously angry. Meanwhile, the guy's phone rang. It turned out to be his good friend, but he had completely forgotten that he had invited her to dinner. The hero calmly picked up the phone and greeted the girl to see if she was okay. She replied that of course not, because he had forgotten about their meeting. Hao Tian tried to pretend that he accidentally forgot about it, but there was no time for that now. He needed to go down to the parking lot right now. The guy thought that right now they would go to a restaurant. What bad luck, he just lost a lot of money yesterday, and today he will be bankrupt again. A few minutes later the hero was already in the underground parking lot. His girlfriend's car was very easy to find, the bright color stood out very much. Chu Yaoyao was already waiting for him inside. Since they had agreed to have lunch together, she should name the restaurant they would go to now. The vice president recalled that already during their first conversation she had chosen an expensive French restaurant. In fact, it was incredibly wasteful. At the same time, Hao Tian noticed that the girl's behavior looked very strange. Usually she behaves much calmer. Therefore, he decides to ask directly what happened to his friend. She clearly has something on her mind. There is no point in hiding secrets from him. Chu Yaoyao finally makes up her mind and asks her friend to do her one small favor. She will definitely thank him for the service. The guy was immediately interested in the offer. Money would never hurt him, and he was not afraid of work. However, the vice president did not dare explain the essence of her plan. It still turned out to be too strange for her. If she really brings this man to her sister, then she will simply spit in his face. This still needs to be thought about in more detail. Hao Tian noticed that the girl was behaving even more strangely. Is it really such a big secret what happened in the end? When they finally arrived at the restaurant, the guy didn't even dare to go inside for a while. The vice president asked him to hurry up. The inside of the restaurant looked incredibly luxurious. They say they serve the best steaks in the city. The place is definitely very expensive. The attention of the waiters was immediately attracted by this couple. The girl looked incredibly beautiful, and her companion looked like someone who would never be able to pay the bill in this establishment. Chu Yaoyao asked her friend how he liked the atmosphere here. The hero, in turn, believed that this was just a place to eat. However, the vice president did not agree with this. After all, this was her first time having dinner alone with a man, and it was important for her to choose a worthy establishment. After this, the girl calls the waiter and places an order. 2 steaks, a fruit salad and a bottle of very expensive French wine went there. The beauty understood that when her companion found out the cost of a bottle of alcohol, he would be very upset. She still wanted to teach him a lesson for that incident in the hospital. Hao Tian, in response to this, decides to joke and says that this wine should cost several hundred, and the whole dinner will cost him several thousand. After all, he can afford it. Chu Yaoyao thought that this person was incredibly stupid. Did he really think that such wine could only cost a few hundred? Meanwhile, the waiter had already brought their order. The guy believed that his salary as a cleaner was enough to pay for the entire lunch. The girl eventually suggested that he would in any case spend all the money he took from her in the hospital. The hero continued to play his role and asked the restaurant employee how much this alcohol cost. As it turned out, its cost was 21,000. Hao Tian thinks that it is too expensive. In his opinion, ordinary dry wine from a supermarket for $50 will be much better. The vice president tried to defuse the situation and explained to the waiter that the man was just joking, but what the hell was he up to? She asked him about this directly, because this wine is one of the best in the world, and, as it turned out, the hero was well versed in this matter. Chu Yaoyao wondered what an ordinary cleaner might know in matters of elite alcohol. He should tell him everything he knows. In fact, the guy was just pretending. all his knowledge was limited to one case when he emptied the entire collection of a rich grandfather. The hero is an ordinary person, his job is simply to sweep the floor. Of course, he is not given the ability to understand all the intricacies of expensive wine, but they specifically write about this that it consists of a mixture of pine cones and violets. And when eating it, it's difficult to even taste the jasmine, not to mention the pine cones and violets. As it turned out, the hero has an incredibly sensitive sense of smell. He is able to find a person in a crowd just by his smell. The vice president wanted to check this. For this he needs to determine who her sister is. The smell of this girl is on her friend's clothes right now. The guy easily managed to determine that her relative was the same rude woman he met in the elevator a couple of days ago. Chu Yaoyao was simply delighted, since they were talking about this. She wanted to know what the hero did to anger Lin Yumu so much. Hao Tian explained that nothing special had actually happened, and then described in detail the situation with the indecent video in the office. The girl thought that this man was crazy. How dare he do this to her sister, but he just has the character of the devil. The guy, in turn, decided that it was time for them, because they had already finished their meal. His companion should go to the car, and he would be there in 5 minutes. The vice president couldn't understand why they wouldn't go together. As it turned out, the guy had a plan, and she was too slow for it. He was to escape from this establishment and not pay the bill. She had nothing to worry about. The hero could do everything on his own. Chu Yaoyao didn't want to do this. Didn't he really have the money she gave him a few days ago? But this act had a basis. Hao Tian claimed that this expensive wine was actually a cheap fake, but his companion did not think that this was a reason to organize a robe. But at some point she found it quite an exciting activity. All her life she had behaved according to strict rules, and now there is an opportunity to break them. In the end, the vice president announces that he will be looking forward to waiting for his friend in the car, and the hero asks the waiter for 2 more steaks. At that moment, he remembered the words that his adoptive father told him a long time ago: the devil truly lives in every person. A few minutes later the guy managed to stuff 2 more huge dishes into himself, and now he was really full. Immediately after this, the waiter approached him and asked if the dear guest would finally like to pay the bill. However, as soon as the man finished his sentence, Hao Tian suddenly simply disappeared from his place. The worker immediately sounded the alarm, and he ordered the guards to immediately seize this villain. He is trying to escape without paying for the order. Chu Yaoyao had been waiting for him in the car for several minutes. What was this fool doing there for so long? Did he really want to eat for free? At some point, the guy finally runs out and heads straight to the car. Now he and the girl need to get out of here as quickly as possible. Fortunately, her car was very fast, so they successfully managed to escape from the crime scene. The waiter could only follow them with his eyes. The vice president really left very quickly, because if anyone caught her in such a situation, it would completely ruin her reputation. So that no one suspects anything, the hero must get out of the car somewhere here. The girl was very worried about this issue, and this is important to her. Her friend, in turn, asks him to give him a ride at least to the city, but his girlfriend recently gave him quite a lot of money. Is he really so greedy that he can't call a taxi? Chu Yaoyao simply leaves and tells her friend not to be late for work tomorrow. She is already tired of constantly arranging for his days off. In fact, Hao Tian did not mind spending a little money on a taxi. The problem was that it was incredibly difficult to catch a car in such a place. Therefore, the guy decides to just take a little walk, although it will take more time, but it will be an opportunity to get some fresh air. Suddenly he notices a bright light behind him, and it instantly dawns on him that right now a car is driving towards him at high speed. The hero only had time to look back and think who it could be. Did he really have some new enemies? Unfortunately, he was unable to jump away and the car crashed straight into him at high speed. He did not at all expect such a turn of events. By an incredible coincidence, Lin Yumu was driving. The girl immediately got out of the car and tried to help the pedestrian. Hao Tian was actually not hurt at all. He was more surprised that it was she who knocked him down. With her, there really is no need for enemies. The company president looked very worried and tried hard to ask the injured person how he was feeling. The girl was quite confused and at first couldn't understand what to do, and at that moment her phone was dead. The guy watched all this from the side and was surprised how this beauty managed to act so slowly. After all, she had just knocked down a man. It is only at this moment that he realizes that Lin Yumou is the CEO of the company where he works as a cleaner. And this meant that he had an excellent opportunity for another extortion. This situation could be turned to his side. Therefore, the hero decides to raise his hand from the asphalt. The president of the company, in turn, was very happy that the pedestrian was alive. However, after a few seconds, the expression on her face completely changed. Was it really that same guy? Lin Yumou came closer to him and asked for forgiveness. She did it completely by accident, and now she needs a phone to call an ambulance. Hao Tian suggested that his mobile phone might have broken, and he also hopes that the boss did not intend to take revenge in this way. The beauty's face immediately made it clear that she was telling the truth. Now, more than anything else, she wants to help the victim. The hero, in turn, tried to pretend to be completely disabled. His life was incredibly difficult. In his young years he never knew love. The girl became even more worried and began to blame herself much more intensely, although she did not like this janitor, but he was the same person. And the guy pretended that he could die at any second, so Lin Yumou must fulfill one of his small requests. The beauty at that moment was so excited that she was ready to do anything. The victim only needed to clarify what exactly. But at that moment, when a seemingly dying pedestrian asked her to transfer some money to a bank account, she suddenly began to think. At the same time, Hao Tian continued to suffer. He was poor for several decades, so before dying he wants to be rich for at least a few minutes. If this does not happen, then the hero will be ashamed to meet his parents in the next world. This idea could indeed seem very sad. When Lin Yumou heard about her parents, she could no longer resist. This performance touched her so much that she was ready to fulfill any request. Therefore, the girl asks for his credit card number. She will transfer the money right away, and the hero simply handed over his phone to her. All the information is there. The president of the company at that moment was thinking how poor this person was in his past life, that he had such a great obsession with money even before his death. Right at that moment, a group of unknown men passed near them. They kept talking about some story and arguing whether it was true or not. There were quite a few of them and they looked very intimidating. The gang was heading straight towards the girl, but what was on their minds? The chief turned to the beauty and asked him to let him introduce himself. His name is Qian, and all these people around are his biker friends. Lin Yumou couldn't believe that such people really existed. They saw perfectly well that the person had an accident, but they didn't even try to help. The hero at that time was thinking about how to get out of this strange situation, and then suddenly some strange people appeared, but they did not create problems. The main biker could not understand how this pretty girl managed to find out in a split second whether he had a conscience or not, and besides, the pedestrian most likely could not be saved. Now she better worry about herself, because if she doesn't do everything they tell her right now, then the gang will act as witnesses in court. At that moment the girl began to worry. Today she had a very bad evening. First she had an accident, and now these freaks. But she tried to remain calm and threatened these perverts. If they even laid a finger on her, they would regret what they said today. The bully was not at all afraid of these threats, but only came closer. This girl is trying to pretend to be brave and daring, but it won't work on him. And in general, she was very lucky that the man had a very kind character. If it were someone else, he would hardly have behaved so politely. At this moment, the president of the company finally breaks down and hits the bastard in the face with all his might. This bastard allows himself too much. From the look of the bully, it became clear that at that moment he was furious. If he doesn't get what he wants today, he will no longer be able to consider himself a man. Therefore, he considers it a matter of his own dignity and immediately rushes towards Lin Yumou. The bastard is determined. However, the beauty was also not going to just stand still and instantly responded to him with a strong blow right between the legs. At that moment, the bully squealed like a pig, and the hero heard it and even he became interested in looking at it. For this he had to turn over to the other side. The main biker could not understand how the girl dared to do this. He orders his people to immediately bring her closer. The rest of the hooligans immediately began to carry out this order, their faces looking rather crazy. These fools were incredibly arrogant. Are there still people in this city who dare to touch the Lin family? Suddenly, all the bikers stopped abruptly. Did this girl really belong to that same family? Hao Tian was surprised when he watched this picture. Apparently her boss is really a very difficult young lady. Qian knew very well what all this meant, but does this beauty really think that if her family has a lot of money, then she can do whatever she wants? As it turned out, this bastard belongs to a political family, and at all times businessmen were afraid of officials. Lin Yumu knew what this idiot was talking about, but she could not understand how such an idiot could appear in such a prudent family. At some point, the ice goddess apologizes to the hero. Apparently she won't be able to save him today. Unfortunately, she won't even be able to protect herself. Is she really going to have to become a hostage to the situation now? But it seems there was no other choice, the circumstances had gone too far. Therefore, the beauty simply closes her eyes and is going to endure all this, if only it passes as quickly as possible. Suddenly, as soon as one of the bikers approached the girl, his face met the guy's hard boot. He simply could no longer lie and do nothing. His boss suddenly opened her eyes and could not comprehend what she was now seeing with her own eyes. She had just hit this man at full speed, and now he stood on his feet as if nothing had happened, and besides, he found the strength to fight. How could this even happen? But in fact, she shouldn't think about it now. She needs to take care of her own safety first. At the same time, Hao Tian swears on her own life that today not one of these perverts will dare to even touch her with a finger. And he also pretends that they have no idea where he is now. He asks Lin Yumu about this. The guy seems to have lost his memory. The beauty couldn't believe that the hero didn't recognize her at all. After all, they met a few weeks ago and had a rather specific relationship. It became clear from the guy's face that he had no idea what this girl was talking about now. Did he really have amnesia? Hao Tian suggested that this stranger was most likely mistaken, because he had been collecting herbs on Mount Wudong all his life and had only now descended from the mountain. He also wondered why these people in front of them were dressed so strangely, whether they could belong to that same demon sect. After all, these scoundrels dared to rob a woman for themselves. Today he was destined to act on behalf of heaven. Evil will be punished, and good will triumph. The director of the company was more and more surprised with each of his phrases. Had this guy really damaged his brain that much? One of the bikers asked his boss if this weirdo could be some kind of hidden cultivator. Maybe they should be more careful. However, in response, he simply hit him in the face with his palm. This fool must return to reality right now. What kind of danger can there be? The hero once again asks the beauty not to worry. In the kingdom of the Tang dynasty, such evil people will never be allowed to do evil. Now you just need to wait here a little, and he will go right now and kill all these scoundrels so that the girl is safe. There was definitely something wrong with Hao Tian. At least his speech became very polite. Could it be that he died now and then became possessed by some priest? Qian wanted to deal with this idiot as quickly as possible and ordered his men to act immediately. They needed to finish off their enemy. At that time, the guy calmly stood in place and with a face full of confidence invited the hooligans to approach one at a time. Now there will be a nice fight. Oddly enough, the main biker wanted to hit first. The man assumed that he could knock out this eccentric with one blow. However, nothing worked out for him. The hero easily dodged his blow with his left hand, and then broke his elbow on a counterattack. And after that, he lunged with all his might, as a result of which Qian fell first to his knees, and after a few seconds, completely on his back. Hao Tian also managed to deal with almost all the hooligans after a couple of minutes. With his current strength, this turned out to be very simple. Those who still remained unharmed could not believe their eyes. It seemed as if a film about martial arts was being filmed somewhere nearby. At some point, one of the bikers realizes that resistance is useless and falls to his knees. He realized his mistake and will never do that again. The hero believed that people who are not saints and sages may have many shortcomings, and if these people sincerely repented, then he forgives them. However, everything was not so simple. The guy, using his unique technique, increased the bacteria of one of the viruses he knew. And after that he stuck this yellow thing on the hand of the fleeing hooligan. His accomplices at that moment were trying to figure out how they too could get out of here. The easiest way was also to fall on your knees and ask for forgiveness. Maybe then this master will have mercy on them. Hao Tian didn't even want to listen to them, but simply said that all these people could leave, but they must take a few molecules of the virus with them. The bikers, of course, did not suspect anything about viruses and simply ran away from here with all their might. They considered that they were lucky today. The acting skills of these villains are too bad. All the emotions were literally painted on their faces. A surprise awaits them soon. Hao Tian asked the guy why he didn't just call the police in the end. Why did he take such a risk in his life? So these bikers could be detained and put in prison, but the hero believes that there is no need to harbor grudges against other people. At some point, the girl agrees with him and asks him to give his name. Apparently she really wanted to check whether Hao Tian was lying or not. The hero said that he had a first and last name given to him by the master. They sounded like Chen Pingdao. That's how you can address him. The director of the company suggested that his master was most likely mistaken, because before everyone called the hero Hao Tian. The guy continued to pretend that he didn't understand anything. He came here to save her, and the beauty was trying to accuse him of lying. At this moment, Hao Tian finally lost her nerve and she ordered this actor to stop his performance. Even a fool could see that he was faking it. The hero simply felt that the atmosphere was becoming too tense, so he was obliged to act out the time travel drama. Really, then why did Hao Tian just ask her for money? So he was also trying to relax her at once or something. Suddenly the girl began to look rather gloomy and picked up a wooden bat from the asphalt. This fool can at least imagine how worried she was now. The guy asked her to slow down a little. He still needs to go to work early tomorrow, so he wants to leave right now. The president of the company, it turned out, was so angry that she was ready to tear the hero to shreds. This joker needs to come back now. However, Hao Tian did not want to risk his own life and simply ran away to his home. In this state it was unsafe to talk to the beauty. The snow goddess was really very worried about him. Why did this person always behave so unpredictably? What was wrong with him? The guy himself understood that this time he really shouldn't have gone so far. Apparently his boss is not such a bad person. The hero immediately went to his home and began cultivating. After all, he had not trained for the last 2 days due to a bunch of stupid things. What he wanted most now was to see how far he could go in a fairly short period of time. After some time, he realizes that he is very tired and wants to continue tomorrow. If the old man had seen such a picture at that moment, he would definitely have cursed. After this, events move forward a day. The president of the company sat in her office and thought about yesterday's situation. Chu Yaoyao noticed that something was wrong with her little sister and wanted to find out the reason from her. Was it possible that someone was making fun of her again? Her eyes were very red. Most likely this was due to a fictitious marriage. All these years they overcame any difficulties together, and this time they will definitely cope. Lin Yumu actually understands how difficult this situation is, because her future groom is very closely related to their family. By the way, the vice president has already selected several candidates to choose from, but they all seem a little unreliable, because a beauty like her doesn't need trouble. It turned out that finding a suitable person is not so easy, but what does the younger sister think about their old acquaintance Hao Tian? The girl couldn't believe that her eldest really wanted to pretend to be this fool's girlfriend, but in truth they had very little time left. After all, Xiao Lei recently completed market research in the United States and should return in just a few days. Chu Yaoyao still insists on his own and doesn't want to do this. Suddenly their conversation was interrupted by a phone call. It was Mom. Lin Yumu learns from the woman that her future groom has returned to the country right now and will come to dinner tomorrow evening. Events unfolded much faster. The mother also asks her daughter not to be too stubborn. She is no longer a child and should become more prudent. Besides, the father's situation is getting worse than theirs. The company president informed her sister that Xiao Lei returned to the country a few days faster. The situation has changed. Now they have no time left to discuss this, so the vice president must immediately transfer the hero here. Still, he has good acting skills. If he manages to pretend at a meeting, as he did yesterday, then the girl will still have at least some hope. The guy, meanwhile, was trying to do his work, but once again he was unable to rest properly, and because of this he was constantly yawning. Chu Yaoyao suddenly came up to him and asked him to go to the president's office with her. The sisters needed to talk to him about something. Hao Tian came to the office and with a smile on his face asked what happened to them, and the vice president ordered him to act a little more seriously. First of all, Lin Yumu was interested in how long it would take for the cleaner to know what her position was in their company. As it turned out, the hero knew that the girl was the president of the company for quite a long time, but in fact he meant that he only found out about it yesterday. But the boss didn't invite the hero because of such a trifle. She should start talking about really important things as soon as possible. The ice goddess called him here so that they could settle scores with him, because yesterday she transferred a huge amount of money to him. Hao Tian, in turn, did not think that he owed anyone anything. After all, it was the girl who hit him with her car, and what if he died? However, the president of the company does not agree. Even in accordance with the law, the amount for moral damage cannot be a full million. No matter how hard the beauty tries, the guy still won't return the money back, because no one forced her to give him such a gift. Lin Yimu assures the employee that although he knows the laws well, he will never defeat such an influential woman like her in court. The hero wasn't afraid of this at all. Is his boss really going to threaten him now? She should think about it several times before. But in fact, the girl did not intend to do this. The guy may not return her money, instead he needs to do something. Hao Tian now became interested. The ice goddess is indeed a very happy person. He agrees to help her. The director of the company explains to him the whole situation. Tomorrow he needs to come to her house for dinner and play the role of her boyfriend. The beauty is sure that he will succeed, because yesterday he managed to get used to the role of a time traveler in an instant. The hero, in principle, was not against it, but with his origin and appearance, none of the rich people would believe in such a scenario. But Lin Yum didn't care whether other people believed it or not. He definitely needed to attend tomorrow's dinner. Also, the president of the company gives him her credit card. Now he needs to buy himself some decent clothes. She will pick him up at exactly 6 in the evening. Now this was a completely different conversation. If necessary, the guy can be an actor no worse than a movie star, if his salary is raised for it. However, the sisters told him to stop talking and hurry to the store. The hero advises them not to worry. He knows a lot about fashion. When Hao Tian left, the girls discussed their choice for a long time, whether they made the right decision today. The hero was able to quickly choose an excellent suit for himself. Quite a long time had passed since the last time he had to put on formal clothes. Suddenly his phone rang. It turned out to be the same student whom he was helping with the treatment of her mother. She had an urgent conversation. The girl was standing on the threshold of the People's Hospital right now. If he has the opportunity, then he should come here. The guy replies that he will be there as quickly as he can. Hao Tian caught the nearest taxi and within a few minutes was near the hospital, where his girlfriend was already waiting for him. As it turned out, my mother's operation was not very successful and the doctor said that she needed to prepare for radiotherapy or something similar. Therefore, the student has to ask him for a little more money. The guy doesn't mind, but due to bank restrictions, he won't be able to do everything right away. The only good thing was that this time only 50,000 was required. It was 4 times less than before. The money had already been sent to her account. While the bank is processing the transaction, the hero wants to see her mother. The girl sincerely thanked her friend, but her relative is now in a coma. Hao Tian says that everything is fine, he just wants to see her. Perhaps his ability will allow him to somehow help the woman. It was just that rare case where a guy acts like a good person, so he needs to stay that way until the very end. The woman had a rather rare type of cancer. It had already developed very strongly and was at the very last stage. The hero warns his girlfriend that if this is a terminal stage, then unfortunately no amount of money will correct this situation. The student understood this perfectly well, but the woman raised her alone and because of this it was very difficult for her. That is why, although the girl does not know whether she will be able to save her mother, she will continue to fight with all her might for her sake. And while she is alive, her daughter will be happy for at least one more day in this world, otherwise she will have no family left at all. In fact, the guy understood perfectly well how his girlfriend was feeling now, because many years ago he lost the only person close to him. Hao Tian noticed that the woman had the same surname as her daughter. Most likely the student was an illegitimate child. She did a great job raising a child on her own. It's truly a huge achievement. The girl's name was Tintin. When the guy saw the sleeping bag he realized that his girlfriend was sleeping right here, because the next bed was too expensive. After that, the guy suggested that she go to the attending physician right away. Even though it was quite expensive, he didn't care. In the doctor's office, the hero came up with a story about how he is a distant relative of the patient, and now he wants to bear all the expenses himself. The doctor does not see a problem in this, but asks Hao Tian to go out into the corridor and talk face to face. This was very important. The guy asked his girlfriend not to worry. He will now talk a little with the doctor and return to her. Everything will be fine. However, the doctor had bad news. based on the test results, we can say that the situation is not very good. According to the most optimistic forecasts, the patient will not live more than a year. Even the most developed methods of Western medicine did not give any chance of cure. After all, cancer at the last stage is very serious. The hero thanked the doctor and said that everything was clear to him. He was ready to tell Tintin this news on his own. However, before this, Hao Tian asked his friend to leave the room and close the doors tightly. The girl could not understand what he was going to do, and the hero persistently asked her not to worry about it. Now Tintin just has to trust him.